I'm going to call the meeting of the General Government and Finance Committee to order at 6:01 p.m. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with section 19.83 and 19.84 Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call is all members are present with the exception of Trustee Myers, who is excused. And with that, we will move on to item 3, approval of the minutes of June 20th, 2022.
I'll move for their approval of the minutes.
All right, we have a motion. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, public comment. Is anyone here or online for public comment? Yes?
Okay, sorry. Always a struggle with technology. Name and address, right?
Please.
Scott Heffley, W159 N10514 Old Farm Road, Germantown, of course. I've spoken before, not in front of this committee, but the village board and other committees, and I'm taking an interest in the budgeting process. I know maybe those of you up there say, hey, but it's something that I understand and have a passion for and have a background, not necessarily in budgeting for villages, but a finance background. So, and I did go through some of it. There's a lot. I mean, there's a ton. You guys know that. You go through it all, and I'm just trying to understand and learn it. So, I'm just making a couple comments tonight, just things that jumped out at me. Overall, what I will say is related to budgeting, that I feel needs to be zero-based, which means every dollar has a place. We need to establish things called best practices, which you probably have. This is the things that we've done. This is the things that make sense. These are the things we need to improve on. It needs to be efficient, which means that, we don't want to have wide swings in the budget. That doesn't help anything when you have a bad year, a good year. 2020 being a bad year, probably your expenses went down, but your revenues likely went down too. So I do have an understanding of that, and I do know that we don't have 2022 really to compare to that I could find. Perhaps it is out there. So this is based on 2021, which I call coming out of COVID year, as it were. So only two things I want to talk about, tonight, and I know there's going to be a discussion later at the village board body, but ARPA funds, which is a one-time gift. I don't know if it's a gift. It's really returning our own money to us, perhaps, but ARPA funds are a one-time deal, and we have to be careful in how we use those because we're not getting any more because the government doesn't have any more to give us. So I was reading about the feasibility study for Friedenfeld Park. I like the idea. I think it's great. Let's see if we can start developing some of the areas. I heard the soccer club's involved. So I'm not against things like that. ARPA funds, like I said, they're a one-time deal. I mean, apparently we have about $1 million left. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Again, I'm just trying to learn all this, but whatever we use it for, I want it used for what I consider the right things, which means you can't hire people, you can't add officers, you can't do those things. You have to use it for other things. And I like what we're using our ARPA funds for, versus, let's say, what the county's deciding to do, but that's on them. They can do whatever they want. They got way more than we did. I questioned why we couldn't get a portion of that, and I was told we can't, so we move on. It sounds like the proposal is to replenish your self-funded healthcare account. First of all, I like the fact you're self-funded. A number of school districts have gone that way, and it has worked out for them too. So obviously, with the cost of insurance going up every year, your costs going up every year is a good way to, if you can figure out a way to keep the reserves up, to replenish that account whenever you can. And I'm not against ARPA being a way to do that. Just realize you can't do that next year. You won't have ARPA funds. So, and I think self-funding is the way to go. The school district is, I believe, researching that very thing. They've never been that way, but the high deductible plans and the costs have escalated for them and will continue to. So, instead of seeing 8, 10, 12% increases, they're beating up their vendors to try to hold the line. They're looking into self-funding, which a number of bigger districts and same-sized districts have done. So I don't have a problem replenishing that fund, just realize that we can't do it next year. With regards to ARPA funds in general, when I looked at it, I can't find out where they're specifically being held. Perhaps it's just in the general account blended in with other revenues. Nobody has to do this, but my suggestion would be, has it ever been thought about that we could put it in a special account within the general account? We could track the number, the kind of revenues we got in and who they went out to and how they went out to them. Whatever the decision is, it doesn't matter. I know we gave bonuses out, that made sense. But where is this stuff going to? I think from a transparency, communication standpoint to taxpayers, don't just do it for Scott Heffley, do it for everybody. What came in and what came out? Is it possible to do that? Again, I don't know. I know we're switching ERP programs, accounting programs, so maybe not. But I just think it'd be helpful rather than blending it in, because I did look pretty hard. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong spot. So that's my comment. And then, are we tracking for a 2022 surplus? I mean, I wouldn't know. This is 2021 numbers. They're year-end. Your year-end's coming up in 4.5 months. Where are we at there? Is there anyone that could present a report to this entity? Maybe you guys on the committee know that. I certainly don't. I can't find it anywhere. But I would want to know how we're tracking. We had a COVID year that shut everything down. We had a coming out of COVID year where maybe revenues and things were up because we could finally do things. Maybe that's why we had some extra permits, extra building, extra whatever. But how are we doing actual year to date, over year to year, 21 to 22? Could we get an intermediate report on that? I feel like it should be, this is me, reported on every month if possible. Maybe it would take until the accounting systems are updated for that, but there might be a way to just do the wrong word is quick and dirty. That's an old accounting term from back in the 80s, but a way to just do it to give some sort of a updated information to this entity to help, because you're the one that's going to probably make recommendations to the overall board, and they're going to rely on you and you digging into stuff, 400 pages of background or whatever it is. So then the final thing I said, so what jumped out at me, probably no one in this committee is going to be surprised at this, but I looked through the budget, not the whole thing because it's big, and there's a lot that you can't do anything with because there's a lot spoken for. That's how budgets work, especially for entities like this. Same thing with the schools. So contracted service engineering budget was 25,000, was 229,000. So that's 815% higher than what was budgeted. Could be for the comprehensive plan. I don't know. But when a big number jumps out at me, I might ask a question about it. You guys know the answers or can provide them. I don't need the answers at this meeting. I'm just saying it jumped out at me. Okay. I think I brought this up before, but I look at our TIFs, and I like the fact, of course, that they're TIF 6, 7, 8, 9. We can see how things are flowing through. I think I mentioned on TIF 6 last time at the village board meeting, when is TIF 6 going to close, or could we close it? Now, why would I even say that? Well, we're getting 61,710 in taxes. That's not a lot based on what I know is over there. There's a lot of equalized value over there, okay? The only things I see moving in and out, there's not a lot of expenses for personnel or any of these other expenses. It seems to be just we're moving debt transfer in and out to repay the debt that's probably still sitting out there. Was there ever a thought that we could repay that quicker? Because my knowledge is, and again, this entity would know or could look into it, is there a way to close a TID or TIF early? Because if there is, you could turn on a flow of revenue to yourselves, which would help you with projects which are going to go up in value based on inflation, or help the school district, okay? Because obviously there's a formula for them to operate within too on that. I don't know, and that doesn't mean I'm right. This is just meaning what I came up with, okay? What I looked at on the numbers, which I assume are correct. They're 21 numbers. They have to be reported and correct. So, I saw a $101,000 deficit in TIF 6, no big deal. The question is, could we bring that early or refund it early or pay down the debt early? Because the only thing I am aware of is we have pretty strong reserve balances. I don't know what it's called in the village area. In the school area, it's called the fund balance. Perhaps it's the same thing here, but if your revenues are at an all-time high, there may be a reason why those revenues are at an all-time high. It may be for upcoming development or something you have down the road. I don't know. But what I'm suggesting is from a budgeting standpoint and understanding finances, you can make your balance sheet look good and have the rating systems like Moody's in them. You get their attention by prepaying debt early or getting it off the books. That still opens up the ability to capacity to borrow, and they'll still feel good about you. You can hold a large balance. That's one way to show them that please rate us highly so we don't have to pay a whole ton of interest expense, because that's on a teeter-totter. If they don't like you or don't like what you're doing or how much you're borrowing, they will raise your cost of borrowing because they'll lower your rating. That's just how it works. That's how bonds work. So the TIF 7 project, I don't think we're near on that one, but we're only getting $83,000 in taxes. Maybe 6 can't close, maybe it can look at it, but we could also have an aggressive debt repayment on that if we have revenues that are the highest maybe that they've been in a while, maybe because of 2020, I don't know. That's running at a $262,804 deficit according to the schedule I looked at, which I did see was on COBOL, which scared me initially because I've seen stuff like this back in my days in business school in the late 80s. But, I know you're running a really old system and you're updating it, and this is a good time to do all that. And I know on the docket there is for an accountant. And I understand that the village had an unforeseen incident where your head of finance retired and you lost 2 deputy assistant clerks or whatever you did. I mean, you lost everybody at once, so we're trying to rebuild out of that. And that's never easy, and especially when labor is at an all-time hard to find, as it were, to keep here. So, I guess just keep doing what we're doing, and I'm going to keep trying to understand this better. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I can't do a back and forth with you, but I will tell you that some of the questions that you have tonight will be answered as part of this meeting. The TIDs, just a quick comment there is TIDs are under their own guidelines and rules, and we do not keep them open just to keep them open. We close them as soon as they can be closed. So that's all I'll say about that right now. But as we get into the budgeting process, if you come along with that, you will probably get a better understanding of the whole thing. So thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. All right. Great. Any other public comments? Okay. If not, we will move on to new business. Item A, Germantown Historical Society, Dinesville Park temporary Class B fermented malt beverage and wine license, September 24th and 25th, 2022.
Move approval.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion to approve the temporary liquor license. Any discussion? This is for the annual Oktoberfest celebration, correct? Okay. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, Washington County Humane Society, Homestead Hollow Park, temporary Class B fermented malt beverage license, September 11th, 2022.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Any discussion? I do see that Homestead Hollow is spelled incorrectly on the thing so that would be the only correction I would have. All right, anything else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, 2021 end of year surplus. And for this, Administrator Krecklow.
Thank you, and I can start out and let Deanna, the village clerk treasurer, jump in as she'd like to. I can also kind of just note that there were some really good questions during the public comment. I think when we get to the reports, I could try to address a number of those.
Good.
In that area. So we are in the process of completing the year-end close for 2021. And we have calculated that at this point, it looks like we'll have a surplus of about $2.4 million. That does include $1.1 million that we received in revenue for related to ARPA funds. If you do look at the 2021 reports, you would see that listed under intergovernmental revenues in the general fund. However, the board this committee and the board several months ago created a special revenue fund to kind of address some of those tracking issues and to make it a little bit easier. So the 2021 books don't show that, but in 2022, you'll see that there is a special revenue fund that was created. The money from 2021 will be transferred in there, and then the receipts from 2022, where the second half of those ARPA funds come, will go into that special revenue fund as well. So taking that out, that leaves us with about $1.3 million. However, there's about $200,000 of funds that were carried over from 2021 to 2022, mostly equipment purchases, larger purchases that were obligated towards the end of 2021, but not paid out until 2022. That leaves the board with about $1.1 million in reserves. We're still working through some of the analysis, but as we mentioned, I think one of the priorities should be replenishing the healthcare reserve fund. As our citizen commenter pointed out, we are self-funded. And it is important that when we have the opportunity to replenish some of those funds, we did have 3 bad years in a row, and those things tend to be cyclical. So if we do have an opportunity to put some funds back in, and I think it would be prudent to do so. There are also some other one-time expenses that are coming forward that we'll put together some options for GGF and the village board to kind of just consider during the budget process.
So the replenishment into the fund is what's your proposal for that?
Well, I'd like to take a little closer look at where the fund is. We're still separating out some of the run-out expenses from 2021 into 2022. So I don't have a number for you tonight. But I think a significant part of it, I would recommend goes into that. And I think we can put that together along with a list and have that in September when we start considering the annual budget.
Yeah, in the event when we are self-funded and we do have this reserve account and we do have some employees that are using the healthcare a little bit more than expected or normal, that's where this occurs, where there's that fund periodically needs to be replenished. I think we've been running a pretty good surplus over the years except for the last 3.
Yeah, it was a rough stretch. And one of the other things I'd also mention for people who might be listening online or on cable, the board did make some changes to the plan design. They increased the employee contribution for starting in 2022. We changed third-party administrators, got some better network discounts, a lower cost for the third-party administrator. And this year, we just went through reports for the first 6 months, and we're right on budget for this year. So it looks like we're trending a little bit more positively.
Good. Terry, you got a question or comment?
Yeah, what type of motion would you be looking for if we don't know how much money we want to put into the fund?
At this point, I don't think there's any motion
Oh.
to
Just informational.
it's
It
just
says approve
informational.
motion forwarding to village board with positive recommendation.
Oh, is it? No, I'm sorry.
Just for information?
Just for
Okay.
information. And I don't think at this point a motion is
Okay,
necessary.
and a quick question. As long as I've been involved in the village, this goes back about 12 years now, we've been self-funded for many, many years, haven't we? That's always been our position. So we've always been self-funded.
And we actually looked at it last year. We looked at several plans, including a non-self-funded plan, and decided to stay with it.
Right, we look at it just about every year, but every couple
Right.
of years.
Last year, we took a real hard look at it, though,
Yeah. Yep.
because the costs were quite a bit different.
Yeah, we solicited proposals both for self-funded and for fully insured, and the self-funded did remain less expensive.
Steve, there was one more that you had mentioned to me today about the fire, the payment back to the water utility.
Yeah. when we initially pulled the numbers, we thought the surplus was a little bit larger. However, and this is one of the challenges with our financial management system. There's a lot of manual entries that have to be made, and as we go through the closing process, we have to verify and confirm that all of those manual entries were made. And that initial number did not include a payment that the village general fund makes to the water utility every year for public fire protection fees. And that's something that the Public Service Commission calculates and requires that the village compensate the water utility for, for the cost of basically providing the infrastructure for fire protection, the hydrants, the extra capacity and pressure that has to be in the mains to be able to respond to fires.
Okay. Do you have anything? So when we look at budgeting again, this has to be taken into consideration. Going to the reserves, our reserves are pretty healthy right now. We have a rather large project coming up with the Public Works facility, et cetera. So this, most of the surplus, if I remember in the past, came from additional permitting. Is that correct?
The past couple of years, we've had higher than budgeted permit revenues. We did this year as well, although not as, I think it was 165,000, so not as much as of a surplus as we had in the past. And that's one of the things we try to, when we budget, I'm always reluctant to budget those revenues too high, because eventually they come down. When there's a downturn in the building cycle, those revenues come down. And if you rely on them for ongoing expenses, then you find yourself in a budget hole. So we did have a smaller surplus. It's a little bit less. The biggest factor for the surplus this year was really more on the expense side, though. It was we had a lot of vacant positions, a lot of turnover that led to some salary funds that were not expended over the course of the year, and we had a mild winter that affected it as well. So we spent a lot less money in 2021 than we had budgeted.
Okay. Great. Thank you for the update, and we'll look forward to the other numbers as they come. We will move on then to item D, Tyler Munis update. So this is one that I asked for. I just wanted to get an update of where we're at with the conversion. And I thought it was a good time to just review that as we start getting into the budgeting year.
Thank you very much. I'm actually going to pass out a sample water bill.
You don't have to pay these.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been asked to provide a brief update on the Tyler Munis project. As you recall, in December, the village board approved a contract with Tyler Munis for a new ERP system. That project consists of 4 major phases: utility billing, financials, HR, and EnerGov, also known as community development. So in January and March, myself, the village clerk treasurer, and the senior deputy village clerk treasurer created a brand new chart of accounts. So when you see in the budget, you'll see 10-51- number. That's an account. So what we did was we created a new chart of accounts that simplified the accounts, as well as matched the revenues to the departments. So right now, if you pulled up the budget, you don't see the revenues and expenses separated out by departments. Going forward, starting in not the 23 budget, but the 24 budget, you'll be able to match revenues with the departments, which will be easier to track per department and for department heads, and as well as the public. Beginning in March, we began the utility billing portion of the project, starting off with the current state, future state analysis. We sat down and kind of took a brief look at where we were at and where we wanted to go. Since then, we've had 3 passes of data with Munis, transferring it to their systems. I'll be honest, the first two passes were a little rough. The data wasn't tracking the way we wanted it to, and there's a lot of missing information there. So the last few weeks, I've been sitting down with Rebecca, who's one of the project managers, and working out those kinks. So going forward, we'll be doing another pass in a few weeks. I'm hoping to have those kinks worked out. I have a data pull. I'm getting into the weeds a little bit. I have a data pull scheduled for next Thursday. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the data from MSI, send it over to Munis, and they're going to not import, but import that data into their system, and we're going to track to make sure if John's name is supposed to go here in MSI, John's name is here in Munis. So assuming that goes successful, we'll be well on our way. We'll have a few more data pulls after that just to wrap things up. In addition, we've started the citizen self-service portion of the project, which is where you got this bill in front of you. The citizen self-service portion of the project is an online portal where citizens can go to pay their water bills, look at their usage history, change their address or name on their accounts, kind of update their personal information. This portal will also be used for the community development portion of the project. Once we get there, they'll be able to apply for permits, licenses, things like that. The utility billing portion of the project is scheduled to wrap up in March 23. So in September and in December, we'll have Munis in-house to do a parallel billing with us to make sure the billing process is going the way it should be. In March, or not in March, I'm sorry, in July, a few weeks ago, we started the general ledger portion of the project. Right now, we are in the design and analysis phase of the project, which for the boring part is filling out spreadsheets saying what we're doing now and what we'd like to do in the future. We will be beginning some of the conversion later in the fall with a go live scheduled for May of 2023. Human resource project portion of the project is set to begin next month in September and is expected to be completed mid-summer 23. And then the community development portion of the project is set to begin in July, completed by the following December. And year-to-date budget to actual is we've so far spent $31,744 of the allocated $380,000. That completes my update.
Great. Any questions? I just have a couple. Is there going to be a paperless option for our residents, or are utility bills always going to go out in paper?
No, so they can get a paper copy, they can get or an
They can
email.
sign up like other ones for paperless option?
Yep, they can pay it online. They can get an email. They can get a paper copy. There's a variety of options. All of it through the citizen self-service portal. When they set up their account, they are able to choose an option.
Okay. And then on the GL portion, this is just a nerdy accountant in me. We're at 4 segments right now. Are we going down to 3 segments? Is that what?
No.
3 numeric segments?
We have, I didn't bring anything for chart of accounts. I think we're at 4 now.
Yeah, we're at 4 now.
I think for most of them, it's going to be 3. I think we have additional options for up to 6 segments,
Right.
depending if we do some project accounting or things like that.
Okay.
I believe it's 3, maybe 4 still, up to 6.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
No.
Great. Thanks for the update. I appreciate that.
Yep.
And with that, I think we go into the next one, right? Tyler Munis Hardware scanners and registers in the amount not to exceed $14,514.
Yeah, so just a quick comment on that. Working with Sarah, the project manager for utility billing, setting up our Tyler cashiering, which will kind of reinvent the way we take payments for all things, including utility billing. When we first approved the contract with Tyler back in December, we hadn't taken stock of where we were at with equipment. Since then, and looking at the capabilities of Tyler cashiering, we thought it'd be prudent to revamp our cashiering equipment, and that's why this is in front of you.
And this ties in right to the new Munis software.
Yes. Yeah, it's fully
We don't have the
integrated.
capability right now with our current.
Correct.
hardware.
To our best estimate, the cash registers are at least 18 years old, but they might be older. But this stuff will currently be fully integrated. The clerks, deputy clerks will be able to pull up right on their computer the transaction history of all registers and things such as that.
All right, committee?
You need a motion to that effect.
We do, yeah.
I would move to approve the spending of $14,514 to Tyler Technologies. It's a one-time expense for the 6 cash registers, et cetera.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? We had it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the accountant 1 job description. And who's taking this one?
I'll start out again and let our village clerk treasurer jump in, but I'll give a little bit of the background and when we did have the retirements in the finance department, we consolidated some of those functions with the village clerk's office. And we took several positions and consolidated the title deputy clerk treasurers. And we've been operating in that way since then, and it's worked out. I think there's been a lot of advantages, but as we've gotten further into this, I think we see that there's a need for some more specialization than we've had. So the village clerk treasurer and I kind of sat down with a vacancy that came up here recently and talked through it and thought it might be a good opportunity to change one of those positions to an accountant 1. It would be at the same pay range. So there's not a budgetary impact, but it would allow us to kind of find somebody who's really focused in that area, and I think would help balance out the workload a little bit more.
Yes, most definitely. And thank you, Trustee Nightrider, for your comments on the email. We can rearrange, if the committee and board want to rearrange the listing, we can do that. But one of the biggest functions that I see here is to have a backup for payroll for the senior deputy treasurer, to make sure there's adequate backup in that area. So this position would have that type of training, as well as assisting with the year-end W-2s, 1099s, all these kinds of things that have some priority that need to get finished, as well as the GL entries too. So looking for a very specialized kind of person for that.
Yeah, and I think, wasn't that a month or two ago, maybe, where we had to spend, I forget how much it was, Steve, to have someone come in, right, and do the closing entries and the journal entries, where if you have a staff person that can do that each year, and that is something we got to make sure that the person hired can do, but it would save us that amount of money as well to have that expertise.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The board approved us bringing in Clifton Larson Allen with some temporary staffing, and that individual is actually still helping us and will be for a few more months with some of those entries. And actually, I think the way we talked through how this might work to fulfill that need, and I think where this accountant 1 position could reduce some of the workload on our current deputy, our senior deputy treasurer, Paula, who does our payroll right now. And she's able to do those entries, but with the payroll cycle coming through, that takes up a lot of her time, and there's a lot of more manual routine types of entries that she spends her time doing. So I think if this accountant 1 is able to come in, get trained on how to do that, it'll free up some of Paula's time to do some of those entries that right now we're having to pay somebody else to do.
And this person would report
Would-
directly
to-
to the senior deputy treasurer, so it would take some of that off of me as well, so.
I think it's an excellent way to go, especially you're not creating an entirely new position. You're replacing somebody by filling a need.
I think will really help where We're improving, I think, every month. We get a little bit better at our processes, and we're learning as we go along and, taking the opportunity to improve some of the processes.
Committee?
Need a motion?
Two.
I would move to approve the creation of the accountant one position for the clerk treasurer department.
A second.
All right, a motion and second. Any other comments?
If I could just add one thing so the committee's aware, because there's not another village board meeting until September 19th, we also put this on the village board agenda under new business tonight.
Okay, and that makes sense because this is something that we want to fill as soon as possible, or at least advertise for it. I think this is a good move. It made sense to combine clerk treasurer when we did. We're now realizing that that was a good thing, but now we have to really start reverting back to a finance department. And I think there's a step in the right direction. Any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and that'll move forward to the village board agenda tonight.
You are correct. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. With that, we do not have any unfinished business, so we'll move on to the monthly reports. With the first one being the monthly financial summary or the year-to-date revenue expense report for all funds.
I'm sorry, it's long. This is a lot to send you on a Friday. I apologize.
I stayed up all weekend reading through these.
Well, and if I could make a few comments, and this might be a good opportunity to try to answer some of the questions that came up earlier during public comment. So this is a report that's included in the GGF packet every month, and it includes all funds and all accounts, revenues and expenses with year to date and compared to budget. And then there's a variance column. So in theory, it's a really helpful report, but to be very candid, the information is really not as meaningful as I think we'd all like it to be.
It is for the monthly expenses, but for some of those one-offs and things that only get paid periodically, right, the variances are going to be different for that.
Right. The system requires a lot of manual entries, and they may or may not be, those adjustments may or may not have been made every month, especially on like Trustee Miller just mentioned, on some of the things that are kind of the one-offs. I think it's pretty helpful for if you're looking at like salaries and wages, or some of the other expense accounts. But when it comes to some of the other things like payments in lieu of taxes, or, actually some of the tax increment district reports are those required journal entries that have to be made. And to be honest, those are the things we're behind on. Those are the things that CLA is helping with. So the other thing, just for kind of informational and background purposes, this particular report, and like all of the reports that come out of our old financial system, we're only able to produce them in PDF format. So like one of the things that the new system will do that will be really helpful as opposed to this is we could, for example, download it in Excel. Any modern accounting system, you can download the data into an Excel spreadsheet, and it makes it a lot easier to do analysis and try to figure out where we are, what project out, what might be happening in the future. We're unable to do that. The system is not able to do that currently. So that makes it a little bit more of a challenge. As far as the question of how are we doing in 2022, so what we try to do as a staff is try to track some of the key, I'd maybe call them leading indicator types of things that give us an idea of what the end of the year is going to look like. Things like we talked about permit revenues and seeing where we're coming in permit revenues, looking at salary expenses and in some of the larger departments and seeing what those look like. Looking at some of the other more variable revenues like the hotel and motel taxes, earnings on investments that are some of the larger, more variable revenues. And then a lot of it just quite honestly comes down to a little bit of a gut feeling, that it's not the way that it should be, but that's kind of where we are right now. That looking at those larger accounts and trying to estimate what the year end is going to look like. And based on those things, I think we'll have a surplus, but I don't believe it will be as large as the one that we're talking about this year. Permit revenues are going to be probably pretty close to on budget. It depends if we get one more big building out in TID 8, for example. That would probably put us a little bit over budget. If we don't get another big building in before the end of the year, we might be slightly under budget. We're still running in a lot of our departments. We've had vacancies, so we're a little bit under expense for some of the salary budgets. But there are some others like fire department where we're running a little bit over because of the overtime that they've had to accrue this year with the number of calls that they've had. So I think I believe we'll end up with a small surplus, but probably I would be surprised if it's as large as the one that we're talking about right now. A couple of the other questions that came up that I could address. One, I'll just mention engineering. And I think that the committee here is familiar with the issue there. We have several vacant positions, in particular, the village engineer position has been vacant. We also have an inspector position that's vacant. And so the engineering department has not spent all their salaries, but instead we've been contracting for those and outsourcing those. So the contracted services number is up a little bit higher.
And to Scott's question before, that's why the contract services looks higher, right?
Yep.
That's because we're basically outsourcing the engineering department right now.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, which you should just give us a 1-minute summary of.
Right. We had tried several times. We'd posted the village engineer position, and we were unable to find qualified applicants to fill that. I think that as maybe the economy is turning a little bit, it might be a good time to revisit that and repost it. It's been a few months since we've done it, but we were unable to get those positions filled in the past, and we really didn't have much of a choice other than outsourcing those functions. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is the kind of economy where sometimes some of the private sector engineers might, the civil engineers working for consulting companies might look around and say, hey, things might be slowing down. Stability might be a little bit more important to me than a higher salary. So I might look at a municipal job. So that I think that's something we should take a look at here this year and maybe get something posted. I could also just touch base real quickly on some of the tax increment district questions. TID 6, and I can't speak to the specifics on the dollar amounts, but just for informational purposes, we do once a year present a full and complete report. It's usually in January. We schedule a joint review board meeting and present reports on the status of all of the tax increment districts. It's either December or January to the joint review board, and then that's passed on to the village board as well. Tax increment district 6 is right now scheduled to run pretty close to the full 20 years. I think it's planned to be 3 or 4 years before it can be closed. That could accelerate. There is one vacant property, and when that's developed, the increment that's created from that property could accelerate that a bit. So it could be slightly earlier, but otherwise, I think we're looking into the mid-2030s before we're able to close TID 6, before it collects enough revenue to fulfill all of its obligations. On the other hand, TID 7 and TID 8 are and in particular today, is doing very well. The last report indicated that that would be able to close in 2032. I've actually been talking with Ehlers about updating some of those numbers because I think it could impact some of the decisions the board makes on financing the Public Works building. But that actually could close as early as 2030 or 2028, which would then, and putting at that point, somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million back onto the tax base, which would have a significant positive impact on village property tax bills, but for both village purposes and for the school district. So that's out there. TID 7 is a little bit behind that, but is also doing well and could be closed out. And maybe just maybe the other piece of it that I might talk about with the TIDs. I know Mr. Heffley might appreciate this. I know he's involved in investments and all of that, but and this is me being the finance nerd, but when we issue the debt, we actually issue notes or bonds. So and for other people who might be listening, it's a little bit different than like a mortgage where we technically can't pay it off early. There are specific due dates, but what we can do is we defease the debt. So if we collect the revenue, we could put it in a defeasance account so that when those notes come due, the money is set aside, and that's the process that we follow to actually close a tax increment district. I may have been a little bit more in the weeds, but
That's good.
yeah.
I like the weeds.
Yeah, great.
So I think that was it on the reports, unless there are any other questions.
I don't think so. That was
Good.
pretty thorough.
Yeah.
Anna, do you have anything to add?
I do. Towards the back of the report is where Matthew has set up the ARPA funding information. It's like at the very, very back.
Right. Where was that?
Here, let me find the page for you because
Getting there.
it was in there. And then there was the part where the 2021 is shown on page 1, so you can see that in the 2021 report. But then for 2022, it is at the almost very end of the report, and he has each of the items shown separately. So that.
Yeah, and just a note on the ARPA, so you'll be able to see the expenses as they're accrued there. What you won't be able to see is the budgeted amount per category. One issue with our current financial software system is if I make a budget adjustment in the system, it doesn't show up on the budget to actual report. I have to go in and do an account inquiry and look at each specific account, and there I'll be able to see the budgeted amount. I haven't been able to figure out how to get it to show up on the budget to actual report. Once I figure that out, those numbers will be there. They are in the system, they just don't show up as the budgeted amount. You'll only be able to see the expense
Yeah, I
or
see it
revenue
here.
account.
It's,
Page 191.
right.
Page 90 of the report, but 191 of the packet, and he had, each one of the items is there as the village board approved with that resolution. So they're all listed.
Okay.
And this is a difficult system to work in.
Won't be for long.
I think everyone's looking forward to getting the new system in place.
All right, any questions on we spent quite a bit of time on the year-to-date reports. Any questions on that or anything that Steve has covered? No? So we'll move on to the last reports, which are the accounts payable for June, July, and August, up to August 12th. Are there any questions on those?
I apologize, that's a lot of reports as well.
There was, I don't think we had a report, and we had one meeting that was postponed until now, so yeah, we're really catching up this month on a number of reports. So, okay, if there are no questions, that's the last thing on our agenda tonight, except for scheduling the next meeting. And the next meeting would be,
September 19th.
yeah, September 19th before the village board meeting. Everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
6 PM.
Yes.
Great. So we'll plan on that. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good report. A good report. Yeah.
All right, you ready? Okay. Are we on the air? I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Village Board on Monday, August 15th at 7 PM here in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all village board members present except for trustee Myers, who is excused, and trustee Pieper, who will probably be joining us shortly. At this time, I'll ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Of the United States of America. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is President's Report. I don't really have anything to report tonight, and I don't want to take anybody else's thunder away, so I'll wait until some other agenda items come up so that those topics can be brought forward and discussed and also provided to us for information. So we'll go then to the next item, which is announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee and department reports. And we'll start with committee reports and committee chairs with trustee Kaminsky.
Public Works will meet in this room on September 7th, which is Wednesday at 6 PM.
Thank you. We'll go then to trustee Rick Miller.
General Government and Finance met previously tonight, and our next meeting will be Monday, September 19th at 6 PM.
All right, thank you. And then trustee Myers is not here today, so what is the next scheduled meeting for public safety?
September 12th at 5:30.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that has anything else they'd like to bring forward for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? Trustee Jan Miller.
Good evening. I would like to say a big thank you for all those that participated in the 4th of July. Third time is a charm. And I wanted to start with all of the board members that really assisted, came on board. Dean Walter started the ball rolling with asking for a couple of volunteers, and both Phil Hudson and myself volunteered to co-chair the 4th of July, which we did. Dennis Myers stepped up for the fireworks, which he's done for many years, so that was great. And we can't forget Kevin Nash of Shore West, who put something on the next door that said there was no 4th of July happening. So I said, yes, there is. We got a lot of volunteers. So thank you, Kevin. Joletta explained.
You'll appreciate that.
Joletta Kirpin of the Kiwanis handed over this wonderful opportunity to us. And for that, we're thankful. Thanks, Rick, I forgot, on our board, who is on the tourism committee, who was able to get our funding approved. We appreciate that. And Steve and Brian helped us with the 501c3. We really appreciate that. And the other people within the village, the Park and Rec, Gil Standridge, Scott Anderson at DPW, Chief Mike Snow, Fire Chief John DeLynn, Tricia Smith from the library, they all participated. In addition to that, we had committee members. Mary Hudson volunteered, took care of all the volunteers, signing them up, making sure we had enough. Lynn Doyle got us great music when we had to change dates and did the music shuffle. Jeannie Fisher did all of the sponsorships and advertising. Dawn put together the parade that never happened, but we're all set up for next year. And Danielle Shira was the coordinator for all the Fireman Parks activities, which included food and beverage and all the games and stuff. She had a big job, so many thanks to Danielle. And we did have a great time. If you weren't there, you better put it on your calendar for next year, and we hope to do it on the 4th of July. Thanks for all that who volunteered and participated. Weather permitting, yes.
Thank you for that report. Everybody that I saw there that night seemed to be enjoying it immensely. Even though I wasn't able to watch the fireworks, they sounded fantastic. Just intense bombardments throughout that brought many applause, and in the end was probably one of the biggest, loudest finales I've heard in a long, long time. So that was greatly appreciated, and also a good idea for us to help supplement that for a spectacular fireworks show. So thank you for all your hard work and for all the committee's hard work and bringing this to fruition. And we look forward to next year and any other events that the committee is responsible for in the future.
That's right. We're open for business at Celebrate Germantown, Wisconsin. And Dean, thanks again for all your donations and time.
Oh, you're welcome. Just glad to do it. And it was fun. All right. Does anyone else have anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports they'd like to bring forward? We can then go to citizen input and public appearance on items not subject to a public hearing. There are no public hearings on tonight's agenda. If there is anyone that would like to come forward or is joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in citizen input and public appearance, you're welcome to do so at this time. All I would ask is you come to the podium in the center and state your name and your address for the record. Is there anyone wishing to come forward for citizen input or public appearance?
Good evening.
Evening.
Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. I remembered this time. So, yes, the fireworks were fantastic, and you have raised a high bar for next year. So it was wonderful. We do appreciate it. So tonight I have some information, some observations, and a request. I attended the 7/11/2022 Economic Development meeting where Trustee Pieper proposed using Washington County Next Generation Housing Funds, of which there are 50,000 available to the village, to hire their consultant, the county's consultant, Vanderwall, to study if Next Generation was a good fit for Germantown. The motion that passed was to direct the staff to garner a proposal for work to see if Next Generation Housing or other types of housing was feasible in the village center area, and if it was, to provide potential ordinance language around this item. Trustee Pieper was emphatic that she wanted to know how many places, if any, might be good for this type of housing in our village. While reviewing the Vanderwall proposal, I could not find the meeting minutes on the Germantown website to confirm the language of the motion. But I've concluded that this proposal jumps over Trustee Pieper's question and is written as if Germantown has directed Vanderwall to start working on the zoning ordinance already, because of the assumption that Next Generation Housing is deemed right for this, our village. There's no mention of evaluating appropriate locations within the village center or anywhere else, except that it does say that it will look at 2 suggested sites, which is not the same thing as telling us whether or not Next Generation Housing is appropriate for our village. Last Thursday, I attended a meeting in this very room with Josh Showman and other representatives from the county. A handful of Germantown people were there. We spent most of the time discussing Next Generation Housing. Mr. Showman explained there's a coalition of 6 cities and villages looking at Next Generation Housing. Germantown is one. Jackson, Slinger, and Hartford are currently conducting pilots. They're at the beginning stages, as I understand it. It's probably a good idea to observe their efforts and results before we spend money on changing a zoning ordinance. The county executive also said that Next Generation Housing is not to be thought of in terms of a physical building response. meaning that it's not necessarily a type of housing such as single family. It could be townhouses, condos, or some kind of high-rise building. We determined that using the words affordable housing has baggage, and that the program is intended to help couples who may be nurses, firemen, policemen, tradespeople, and other people working within the community. The idea is to tailor a village and people-based solution to help lower wage working people with home ownership. There are fiscal requirements of the couples. They are either going to have to pay back the loan after 7 years of home ownership, potentially, or work off the loan through community service. None of these details are completely worked out. He was thinking of it more of an incentive and not a subsidy. So going back to the Van der Waal proposal, how could such a detailed proposal for changing the zoning ordinances be a misunderstanding of the request to study where next generation housing might work or not in the village? Perhaps they repurposed a proposal that was redone for one of the test villages, or maybe someone asked them to do it this way. It's hard to tell. So from what we were told by the county executive is that they have a vision, they're working on some pilots to test out options, and we don't have a full picture. My conclusion at this time is that it's premature to spend the money on changing ordinances that might look different once the pilots are complete. I think that Trustee Pieper's original request should be honored, and that is to look at Germantown to see if it makes sense for next generation housing. I also believe a full village center master plan should be created at a conceptual level for the village, for this area. And in conversations with some other residents, have you considered talking to Germantown realtors about this matter? Because they have the knowledge of the area. Just a thought. Switching gears, and I won't be too much longer, regarding the referendum. I wrote a memo to the entire village board on 4/22 regarding the potential IGA for extending sewer and water to Richfield. 4 pages of questions. I received a response from Administrator Kreklo, thank you. However, perhaps I was not clear enough in some of my questions. Not all of them not all of the answers address the questions that I was asking. I'm requesting tonight that this memo, its questions, and the answers from the village be provided to the consultant who will be conducting the education package for the referendum in November. There are items still outstanding to be answered, and there is still time at this stage to put some answers together, which would be useful for the education packet. Looking at their schedule from the August 1st presentation, this work appears to be a month behind, so a lot needs to be done. Regarding the language of the referendum, that's also in the agenda, the description accompanying the question seems to infer that there's little for Germantown to do and the utilities magically run smoothly. I think some words are missing from the explanation. I'm not going to go into the detail because I believe someone else from the audience will be bringing this up as a subject matter. So thank you for your consideration of my comments.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else within our audience or joining us via WebEx that would like to come forward for citizen input or public appearance at this time?
Thank you for the time. Scott Heffley, W159 N10514 Old Farm Road, of course, Germantown. Maybe my comments were referenced. I did see the referendum question, and for the most part, you know, there's the things that I expect to see. I'm glad our attorney is here to clarify anything we might have a question on. So, raised by an English teacher, so that was very strong in our house. Less words, better words, more words, but the right words. And I do not like the word sell. I think I've made that known before. Selling anything is a contract between a buyer and a seller. That is what it is, plain and simple. Look it up in the dictionary, okay? When I moved to Germantown and moved into a subdivision that had sewer and water, I was not allowed to choose whether I wanted sewer and water. It was there and I had to hook up, and that's called the usage fees. No one sold me anything. Hey, do you want sewer and water? Or gee, Scott, you're an old farm. Why don't you punch a hole and dig a well and put a mount system and we'll see if the setbacks are okay and the planning commission likes it. No, that wasn't it. You moved in, the laterals were there or existing or whatever, and you hooked up to it. So in the same way, we're not selling police, we're not selling fire, we're not selling DPW, we're not selling, salaries of we're not selling those things. Those are expectations that are provided to people. Why do I move to Germantown? Well, it's a great place, got great schools, excellent fire, excellent police, excellent people working here. We're all working together. That's not a sale, that's providing. Whatever we do in regards to this, we are providing the ability, if the taxpayers say yes, to allow and provide sewer and water to Richfield, much like we provide our own residents. So I know we've discussed all these wonderful reserves we're going to have, and geez, it's going to be a cornucopia of money flowing in. I don't see it. No offense to anyone sitting up there, anyone sitting here that works for the village. Government tends to overstate and underdeliver on revenues. I've seen it a million times. Not picking on anyone in this room, it just happens, okay? And I know the Renwood gentleman was here last week, and that's a beautiful development. I've driven through there, we'll agree that's a nice place. That is not next-gen housing, okay? Guys, it's 700 or 800 or 600 to get in there, right? But here's talk about water utility for a minute, right? If I want to be in Renwood and I want to buy one of maybe their model homes, there's impact fees Germantown charges. There's $832 for water and $4,328 for sewer hookups. It's in your message, it's in your information. I have to pay that. If I want to live there, I don't have a choice. I have to pay to hook up, and then I have to pay usage fees on that use. If I use more water, it's more, and if I use less water, it's less. That's the way it's worked forever, right? So these costs, and when I hear we're basically retailing water to Richfield, well, guys, we're not retailing water to Germantown, much less Richfield, because you can't charge them extra because the PSC says you can't. So whatever I pay, you pay, they pay, Richfield will pay. The water is the water, but the water comes at a cost. The water is not free. It comes out of the ground free. And let's for a moment just look at the fact that forget about salaries and expenses, all those things. You have to have that if you're going to run a utility. An enterprise system, utility, whatever you're talking about, you have to run it. I added up the cost that I got out of the budget for last year, and just the basic costs of water was over $1 million, 1.148 million. Pump operating expense, including electricity, pump maintenance, treatment costs of the water, maintenance, fixing the water mains. Okay, guys, that's $1 million plus every year, all right? That is highly, highly unlikely to go down if we provide water to another entity. I only see it going up. And I know when people say, and I've been told this, and I understand it, and it's logical, and I'm a logical person, it's only one 443-acre parcel, Scott. Richfield's got 35 square miles, okay? We're talking about a tiny little corner of the village. I get all that, okay? I do. But I don't think it's going to be this huge influx of cash into our water utility or sewer utility. And by the way, our water utility was operating at a deficit until you all agreed to raise the water 65 or 80% or whatever the number is going to land on, okay? Without that, they would be running in the red like they have for years. That's not their fault. It's just that we never addressed the cost in the last 10 years, much less the cost now. Just an opinion, okay? So I like the word provide, not sell. Sell, because if I see this as a taxpayer and I'm just living in G-Town hanging out, oh yeah, we're going to sell water to Richfield. That sounds great. My gosh, that's fantastic. Maybe we'll get money and it'll lower my taxes, okay? Maybe they don't know that. Maybe they do. It just sounds like it's leading the question, and I don't like that. I looked at the explanatory statement. I love those words. I'm an English teacher mom. I love big words, right? So I read it. Okay, it says what it has to say. I'm sure there's nothing more, nothing less. But here's the thing that I don't see in there. This is for perpetuity, okay? All you wonderful people, some of you have been on the board a long time, some of you are newer. 50 years from now, 30 years from now, 20 years from now, you probably won't be sitting here. Maybe you're younger than all of us. Maybe Jolene will be on the board. Well, maybe not. But what I'm saying is the next village board and the village board after them and the village boards forever are going to sit here. And then we're going to say, they're going to like, well, this isn't working out. Maybe we had a drought. Things are going bad. We're losing our butts. What do we do? Well, there's nothing you can do because you made the agreement. You can't go back on it. You can't probably sue your way out of it, whatever it is. So the taxpayers might want to know it's a forever thing because, and I will, if you tell me it's not a forever thing, I believe this body. If you tell me it's not, I believe you, and I'll retract my statement. But until somebody tells me this isn't forever, then it is forever, in my opinion. Okay? And here's the other thing. Let's say, and I've been told this, okay, this is the first parcel. This is just establishing the connection. Richfield's paying for it. Yes, generous. And we provide them sewer water. Okay? Does anyone in this room think they're going to go hunting for another provider if they get mad at us for some reason, or G-Town's pissing us off, or, by the way, we don't think our sewer usage taxes should be a 20% premium over Germantown. We want what you want. Hey guys, throw us a bone, hook us up, help us out. Does anyone in this room want to have that discussion? That could be troublesome. Okay? So the taxpayers should know that Germantown will be the single source for sewer and water services for Richfield to help them develop. And that, again, to coin a phrase, is in perpetuity. Now, well, we're not going to let them just run all over us, and we're not going to let them do this, and we're not going to let them do that. I'm glad the attorney's here, okay? You establish something by a vote between communities. It's intergovernmental in nature. Tell me how easy those are just to break. If we're the only source, where else can they get water from? Menominee Falls? Jackson's more expensive. The Falls is probably more expensive. Hartford's more expensive because they're all farther away than we are. We ran our water out there for Briggs and Stratton or whatever we did, and it's right nearby, and they know it. So we are the most affordable option for them. They know that. We know that. Everybody knows that. But again, forever. Okay? As further development occurs, Germantown will likely have to fund the additional costs for lift stations, extra personnel. I mean, it was brought up here in a PowerPoint at taxpayer expense, however you look at that, okay? A usage fee, you probably need to throw some taxpayer money in there as part of the general budget. And you're limited to water use by the PSC. So G-Town pays the same as everyone else. So you're not going to make the money you think. However, I was told the real money is in the sewer, right? Because we're allowed, under the guidelines, whether it's MMSD, the state, or whoever, to charge an extra 20%, right? When I look at our sewer budget, and maybe I need to dig in it further, it seems like we have a reserve there. Maybe it looks like our MMSD expenses dropped or something. There's no guarantee on that. It is MMSD, and I know they're a good partner, but they can raise their rates, and we got to deal with it. Everyone in this room should have got something from We Energy as they're going to PSC looking for 8 or 9% increase because their costs have went up. Any chance they're going to get that? Sure. So it's going to happen, which is why from the very beginning, I was troubled by the fact that Germantown will own the sewer and water lines inside Richfield's village boundaries. And if that has changed and I misunderstood that, I would look for clarification. I brought it up before. I don't understand all of this stuff. I'm just the taxpayer looking at this. Why would I want to own sewage lines and water lines in another municipality's boundary, even if it is part of an IGA and we get along and we have for years or decades, okay? Because we will be responsible, Germantown's sewer and water utility will be responsible for maintaining, and if things go wrong and things break, we have an earthquake, a tornado, whatever, fire, it's on us, okay? So I'm not saying that Richfield's not willing to pay their portion. I'm saying that we will pay the lion's share of it because we've spent the couple $100 million or whatever we did to run sewer and water the last 30 years for this village, which is why we are accessible, okay? So I kind of went into depth. Thank you for the time, Dean. The final thing I'll say is about the thing I keep bringing up over and over again. I want to thank Mr. Krecklow for bringing it up to our attention in the last meeting, GGF. We have a lot of vacancies at this village, okay? I asked a question to GGF. Okay, we budgeted 25 grand for fees for engineering and they're $230,000, whatever they are. Then I'm told we don't have a village engineer, we have a vacancy. I appreciate that, I understand that. You're backfilling it with consultants. Consultants are expensive. People that know what they're doing are expensive. I'm sure our attorney doesn't bill at 10 bucks an hour, you know, because he's a professional and he deserves to get paid. He's a consultant for the law. So we're working through it. I understand that. I know more than I did, okay? I see we're using COBOL for accounting. I just about fell over when I saw that on the report because that's what I learned in business school in the late 80s. We were using COBOL-based solutions. And here we are, 2022, and we're COBOL-based. I could probably we could send that software maybe to a museum somewhere when we're done with it. I mean, seriously, or let some people from another country take a crack in coding COBOL because it's interesting. Anyway, the ERP is great, long overdue, fantastic, but I worry about the process. How are we going to train everybody and get them up to speed? Because this is new software for everybody. It's new for Matt, it's new for anyone, accountant that we're looking to hire. It's all new. So what are we going to do to make sure that they're up to speed? I know Mr. Krekel will be involved, and I'm sure Deanna and everybody else. So we got to get them up to speed, and then we'll need to be writing standard operating procedures, SOPs, which everyone requires. You're going to have to draft those and put them in there. So if somebody leaves the village and comes in, we aren't in this place again where somebody leaves and we don't know, oh, the software's too old, only she knew how to run it. You don't want to have that again. You can have it once, but you can't have it twice. So will we be spending the resources to put that together? I think that just makes common sense for that. So I had a question that was answered by Matt. Thank you, Matt, earlier. So I don't need to bring it up here. My opinion is, last thing, Germantown is in a growth phase. I keep hearing that developers are desperate to get in here, want to get in here. We have the water, we have the infrastructure, we have the roads, we're working on things. People want to come here. I will assure you that is not the case in every municipality, in every part of the Midwest, the country, or whatever. There's a lot of municipalities in other areas that are slowing down, okay? Amazon hasn't finished that big thing they bought off Capitol Drive. They pulled back from that. They're not telling anybody, but they're not working on it right now. It looks beautiful, but it ain't done. So people are pulling back because there's high inflation. And there's other things that are putting a damper, how they can borrow money, for instance, those things. Now, we're lucky because G-Town seems to be in the bullseye of it. Let's come in and develop. G-Town's great. And I agree with that. So how do I know we're in a growth phase? I'll go off 2021. People in the room can say it's because of COVID, but bear with me. Building fee permit revenue up 25%, electrical permit revenue up 97%, plumbing up 107%, appraisal inspection up 130% over 2020. Planning commission review fees up 51%, and those are the 2021 numbers, and I know Matt said there's 2022 available, but let's just, if we take the COVID influence out of that, they're still up, okay? They're still up, and they're still up substantially. I haven't been able to look at the numbers from 3 or 4 years ago. I probably could. I didn't have time, but they're up, and they're going to continue to be up, okay? And that's just going to continue to happen. So we lost 2 assistant clerks and a finance person. We're trying, you know, we did what we could. Thank goodness Deanna and her group is willing to help us out. But, you know, I see the need for an accountant, and I hope you guys, you know, want to do that, and that'd be great. But again, I'll say what I said. We're not staffed up, if that's the word, to handle a huge development, whether it's through an IGA with Richfield or letting a bunch of people come in and develop, or a 2050 plan. Again, I just look for caution, because once you go down the road and say, everything's going to be great, we'll work it out, Scott, and then it doesn't, you guys are going to be sitting here saying, well, what did we do that? What did we do that for? The last thing I'll say, I know Next Generation 911 is here. Everybody in this room knows I'm a big fan of public safety, always have been, always will be. So when we come to budgets, Chief Snow said it was about 300,000. Okay, that sounds like a lot to throw on the police's budget. 2 ideas I have, and again, I'm just a guy, I'm not doing the budget, so I can say whatever. Why not split it between police and fire? If it's 300, it's 150 to each, because I think there's a lot of mutual calls that happen. They work together. You know, would they be okay? You got to talk to the chiefs and let them know, but that would be 150, not 300 on police. Or what's another thing we could look at? I was told we have a pretty healthy budget in the village. That doesn't mean we spend it all, but maybe we do it all. If this is something we feel is important that helps out our police and fire be more effective, and get the calls earlier, whatever the justification is. 100,000 from the village as a good faith, 100 in a budget, 100,000 for police, 100,000 for fire. You do three, and that's 300,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward for citizen input or public appearance? Or anybody joining us online that wants to come forward?
No one online.
All right, thank you. If there is no one else, then we can go to consent agenda. Board?
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through H as presented.
Second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve consent agenda items A through H. Any discussion on that motion to approve? Trustee Kaminsky.
I'd like to pull H, please.
H. Okay. Any further discussion on approval of consent agenda, now items A through G? No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum,
Aye.
trustee Hudson,
Aye.
trustee Kaminsky, trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
trustee Jan Miller, trustee Nightrider,
Aye.
trustee Pieper. Aye. President Walter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Consent agenda item H, Buckthorn brush pickup data review and future recommendations. Trustee Kaminsky.
Now, this may not sound like a really big deal, but it really is to everybody, all of the residents, when it comes to brush pickup. And Public Works last week did approve and pass this on to the village board to make some changes that people should be aware of. And one of those changes is we're going to continue in October this year to have our second brush pickup of the year with no buckthorn included in it. So if you have those prickly bush-type trees with the berries on them, don't put it out because it won't get picked up, and then everybody's going to be upset. That's step one. Next, late spring, probably after Memorial Day, we're going to be switching to, and I'll ask Tim, if I say anything incorrect, please jump up here. We're going to be switching to an annual brush pickup where we'll take all your buckthorn and anything else in late spring, in that early June pickup. And so save it for then, if you would, and we're going to adapt to that type of a brush pickup in the future. And I just thought it'd be important. There's more people watching this than watch Public Works to kind of get that message out. And please look at the Germantown website for more information. And we're going to actually hopefully have a display and pictures of what buckthorn looks like, so you know what not to put into the brush in fall, okay? And that's all I have.
According to Tim, part of the reason you don't want it in fall, but it's okay to pick it up in spring, is the berries transfer and drop the seeds that then propagate the buckthorn throughout. So that's one of the reasons you don't want it in fall. And then when the spring pickup happens, which will be more towards June, that will be the only one for that year, correct? Meaning it's annual, it will be once a year from that
Correct.
point forward. Okay. All right. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item H.
Yes.
Motion made and seconded to approve item H. Is there any discussion on that motion to approve? No discussion? We'll do roll call, please.
Trustee Kaminsky.
Aye.
Trustee Baum, trustee Hudson,
Aye.
trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Nightrider,
Aye.
trustee Pieper. Aye. President Walter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you. That then takes us to new business. We'll start with new business item A, Right Way Bus Service, Inc. Applicant and property owner located at West 196 North 13704 Fond du Lac Avenue, ordinance 14-2022 for a 2020 land use plan map amendment from agricultural conservation residential to rural residential, from ordinance 15 and also ordinance 15-2022 for a rezoning a portion of the property from A1 to A2 agricultural and RS2 single-family residential, and a 3-lot certified survey map to divide the subject property. To give us some more information and background on this new business item, we'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff. Jeff, could you turn the microphone on, please? Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Thanks, Brian. The Right Way Bus property is located south of Cedar Lane and north of Fond du Lac Avenue. It's 78 acres in size, and it's subject to 3 applications this evening. One being a land use plan map amendment. The current classification is agricultural and conservation residential. The purpose for the land use plan map amendment relates to the proposal to create a 3.2 acre site, a 2.6 acre site, lot 3 of the 3 lots that are proposed to be created. And as shown on the screen, it's in the far southwest corner of the property. It's actually, by virtue of being separated by Fond du Lac Avenue, it is a freestanding parcel already, although technically or legally it was included in the legal description for the larger 78 acre parcel. This process, in addition to splitting off a 15 acre parcel with a existing home, is to sort of clean up this 2.6 acre parcel and recognize it as a legal parcel. And in so doing, we're doing some cleanup with the 2020 land use plan map and the rezoning from A1 agricultural to RS2 single family for the 2.6 acre parcel. As I mentioned, there are 3 parcels that are proposed. Lot 3, the residential parcel, 2.6 acres. Lot 2, 15.25 acres in size, includes an existing dwelling. The zoning proposed for that is from A1 to A2 agricultural, and the balance of the property in Lot 1, just over 58 acres in size, will remain in agriculture use and A1 agricultural zoning. The Plan Commission recommendation was to approve the land use plan map amendment as proposed, approve the rezoning of lots 2 and 3 from lot 2 from A1 to A2 agricultural and lot 3 from A1 to RS2 residential. And also the Plan Commission recommended approval of the land use plan map amendment and also the 3-lot certified survey map with one condition, which since the Plan Commission meeting has been addressed through corrections made to the CSM that are reflected in the copy that the clerk has available for signatures. So with that, again, the recommendations are to approve all 3 items.
Board?
We'll make a motion to approve the 2020 land use plan amendment, the rezoning from A1 to A2, RS2 single family lot, and the 3-lot certified survey map as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve all items as listed under new business item A? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item under new business is item B, Newman Developments, applicant for Renwood LLC, property owner of 62.8 acres south of Freistadt Road, west of Pleasant View Drive, final subdivision plat for Renwood North of Phase 1, a 46-lot residential subdivision. Once again, to give us more background and information on this new business item, we'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Renwood subdivision is located east and abutting the railroad, south of Freistadt Road, west of Country Air, and north of Mequon Road, as shown on the screen. It's comprised of 3 basic components. Renwood North, obviously the north part of the project. The area is bisected by a middle area of open space comprised of mostly wetland. And then the southerly part, Renwood South, which is nearly complete in terms of build out for homes and the condominiums, is located in the south adjacent to Country Air and Mequon Road. The total number of units for the Renwood subdivision that was approved back in 2019 includes 200 total dwelling units, 142 single family and 60 multifamily dwelling units, or up to 60 multifamily dwelling units. As I mentioned, the Renwood South component is developed, nearly complete. The Renwood North component is subject to the application this evening. The proposal is to approve a total of 46 out of the total 95 remaining single-family lots that are proposed for development. And they're highlighted in the red dashed box. It's sort of the west portion, or phase one, if you will, of the Renwood North phase of the development. At this point in time, public improvements, sanitary sewer, water, streets, and landscaping are complete or nearly complete. Sanitary sewer remains to be final tested. The water, I understand, remains to be tested as well. The streets, the first lift and curb and gutter have been installed, and the landscaping in the common areas and street trees is incomplete at this point in time, but is subject to installation as at one time when the development lots have been nearly built out, and that's reflected in the development agreement that was approved this evening. The Planning Commission reviewed the proposal. There were some staff comments suggesting some additional revisions, some minor corrections to the size of Lot 18, expanding the landscape easement along Freistadt Road from 20 to 25 feet, consistent with the preliminary plat. And the Planning Commission did discuss the need to resolve the a right-of-way issue along the east property line that was raised way back when the project was originally proposed. That area is subject to phase 2 of the Renwood North project and doesn't need to be resolved this evening or before Renwood North phase 1 is approved, but it is an issue that it needs to be resolved soon. And again, it concerns a 16.5-foot right-of-way that was dedicated many, many, many years ago along the easterly property line along the Susan Bernard property. And the right-of-way itself is overgrown with trees and shrubs. It's unusable in the sense of providing access to the Bernard property further south on the property. And since access to the Bernard property is to be provided by way of improvements through Renwood North at 2 different points through road construction, the need for that right-of-way for right-of-way or access purposes really is unnecessary at this point. But we need to resolve what to do with that 16.5 feet in terms of the platting. With that said, the Public Works Engineering and Surveying Department had some comments. They're working with the developer to get the as-built drawings completed. Freistadt Road sidewalk construction will be handled by way of collecting a fee in lieu of construction at this time, with the village to presumably install the sidewalk at a later date. And there's some minor technical corrections in the plat that the survey identified that are being addressed by the developer's surveyor. With that, the Plan Commission recommendation was to approve the Renwood North final subdivision plat for phase 1 or 46 single-family lots, subject to 9 conditions. 2 of those had to do with the monument signage, so really 7 conditions concerning the Renwood North final plat.
Okay, thank you. Board?
I'll make a motion to approve the final subdivision plat for Renwood North Phase 1, a 46-lot residential subdivision as presented.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Jan Miller.
Jeff, I have a question. Can you point out on your map where the questionable 16.5-foot right-of-way is?
Sure.
Along the eastern, and it goes the entire length of that red line?
No, about halfway
Halfway.
down
Okay.
from Freistadt Road on the northerly point, about halfway down, 16.5 feet.
And how will they, okay, so now I can see. So this road that has an east entrance, that's supposed to be one of the access points?
Yes.
Oh.
The Bernard property that lies east of the Renwood at that sort of elbow there, that will have the ability to get access to it from 2 different street extensions.
And when will those street extensions be completed?
It's part of the Phase 2 development for Renwood North. The developer's here, and he could probably give you a better idea, time frame wise, when that might happen.
Yep, just put
Yeah,
your
you
button.
better.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin Anderson with Newman Developments. As far as Phase 2 goes, in case the board is not aware, we have made a presentation and we were awarded Renwood North Phase 1 as a Parade of Home site for 2023. So our goal is to finish the roads in Phase 2 next spring, early summer, so that come August 1st, the roadways are done, and for the Parade of Homes, Renwood Phase 2 can be used for street parking for the parade.
Sure.
So to answer that question, we hope to be done by the end of July next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion, trustee Hudson.
Yeah, I have questions concerning the geometrical nature of the retention ponds. Is this just an artist conception here? Are we going to soften up these corners and make them look somewhat natural, or is this kind of what is envisioned?
This
for
graphic is a concept plan from early on. I don't know that I have a graphic that shows the actual design of the stormwater basins.
Basins are generally, well, they're all constructed at this point. They're not as
Do
sharp
they have
corners, if
rounded
you
corner?
will.
That's
You know,
all.
they're
I'm asking.
graded and they're soft curves.
All right.
So if you drive through there, it looks like a man-made pond, but there's no sharp corners.
Thank you.
Further discussion, trustee Jan Miller.
I noticed that your DUs were single story were like 1,200 minimum. Is that right? Or 15? And then the 2-story were 2,200. Is that about right? Or
Sounds low. I don't have it memorized. I thought it
Oh.
was 1,600 for
Oh.
1 story and 22 story. Is that correct? It's in the packet.
Yeah, 1 story, 1,900 square feet minimum, and more than 1 story, 2,200 square feet.
okay. And then the lot sizes were around 16,000. Is that right? And what would that be considered, Jeff? RS.
It's RS5
Thank you.
is the underlying zoning. And through a PDD with some amendments, the lot width was reduced by 10 feet, but the general lot size that was discussed, the minimum was 15,000 square feet, but the average was closer to 15,706 square feet, I believe was the average lot size.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Not opposed? Motion carries. Sir, you have something to say? No?
I was just going to point out that Jeff mentioned it, but 8 and 9 are actually just related to our entrance sign, not the final plat approval.
Right. Thank you. Next item under new business is item C, which is Germantown Historical Society, Inc., Dinesville Park, temporary Class B fermented malt beverage and wine license for September 24th and 25th.
Move approval as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed. Motion carries. Next item is item D, Washington County Humane Society Homestead Hollow County Park temporary Class B fermented malt beverage license on September 11th, 2022.
Move approval as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item E, Next Generation 911. Give us some more information and background on this. We'll bring up our Chief of Police, Mike Snow. Chief.
Hi, so a couple weeks ago, I was able to come here and tell you almost nothing about Next Gen 911, but I promised I'd bring someone that could, and that is what I did. So Gary from General Communications will answer some of those questions and explain some of the cost of that.
Hello, I'm Gary with General Communications. If you want to give me a quick overview of what NG 911 is, so it's basically an IP connection for your 911 calls. Currently, you're still running on analog system, just like cell phones, TVs, and radio systems are going to digital. And now the radio system or the telephone system for the 911, still an analog, we want to take that to digital. And by doing that, it brings on a lot more stuff in the future, including text to 911, images and video are future planned things that the state is working on right now. And so really it's the future of 911 systems.
Okay. Questions? Trustee Hudson?
When is the future?
When is it? It's evolving all the time.
Well, so is it tomorrow or are you talking?
No,
10
so right
years?
now the state has been working on this, what's called an EZNet. It's an Emergency Services IP net. So they're just now putting in the infrastructure to do that, and they're asking agencies who want to join on to this. So this is something that's that we're just happening now. Agencies are still working with the state to secure so the state secured a contract with AT&T. They're the provider, and I believe that's the provider now for the phone circuits coming in. But instead of being an analog circuit, it'll be a digital circuit.
And how many municipalities have installed this to date in the state of Wisconsin?
I don't have those figures with me, but a lot of it is just happening. The agreements just went out to the municipalities that wanted to join into the system. So right now, we're at the very beginning of it. They've got the core in. A lot of other states are doing it, and now Wisconsin is doing it. And AT&T is over the next year or two. A lot of departments will be switching to this new system.
So do you know any municipalities in the state of Wisconsin that are currently installing?
Right now, a lot of them are in the process of putting them in.
Such as?
I don't have those numbers with me. I can find that out. I'm actually, I've been appointed by the governor as I'm on the E911 subcommittee for the state. So right now, again, this is just very, very new. The system is installed, tested, ready to go, and now they're just starting to put folks on. But there's a lot of things, you just don't plug it in. There's a lot of other things behind the scenes that have to be done, site surveys and other things that need to happen. So I can get, right now, they are still getting that list of all those folks that are signing up already. So they basically had to sign an agreement with the state to provide those EZNet services. So it's a participation agreement, which has been filled out, and they're still receiving those agreements in.
And we don't know who is opting in and who is opting out at this point in time? Am I understanding you
Most
correctly?
folks, I mean, most folks are going to be opting in. A lot of it comes down to budget. Do they have the money? There's grant money out there and different things. The state actually has a grant right now for the EZNet system that I believe your department has applied for as well. So they are doing grant money because they're encouraging folks to get onto the system.
And what percent will the state pay for?
I believe, was it 75% or?
As a grant?
I believe that's the grant that was already awarded to Washington County.
Okay, the county itself, okay.
We don't get it.
The requirements were such that,
Mike? Information shared is,
sorry about that. The grant that went out is, the requirements were that you had to take all 911 calls. So that eliminated a lot of PSEPs around the state. You had to have 2 dispatchers working at all times. That eliminated a lot of us, including us, including West Bend, were eliminated because of that. So that was awarded to Washington County. And the county had to designate who the grant was going to, basically, and they did choose Washington County.
choose themselves.
There is some grant with the Safer Communities. We can use some of that grant money. There's not a lot there, and we have that kind of targeted toward other projects right now, but there is some money for that. And we don't have to do this right now, but certainly at some point, it's something that we're gonna need to do.
At some point.
Right, we can stay as we are right now. And this was nothing that I had anticipated budgeting for next year, but it's just kind of getting you familiar with what those costs are going to be down the line, that they're going to be sizable.
So will we know the future when it's time, or, I mean, what is,
Eventually, AT&T will stop supporting analog circuits. So right now, they're providing both because it's new, but they've done this on other types of circuits that eventually, after maybe 5 years, they're just gonna say, okay, we're done. You have to switch by this time frame.
okay,
But there's a lot of, like I said, safety. The text to 911 has been proven to be very good, especially during home invasions, that you can be able to text the dispatcher. So a lot of life safety here.
I think some of the information that was shared about this at the last meeting, Trustee Hudson, where you were excused, was that most of the 911 calls that are received now, because most what people consider landlines are really VoIP or voice over IP, and cell phones are being routed through the county to us, and don't come to our 911. They come through the county to us. So that's one of the reasons why it was the county grant, and that we weren't really, part of that acceptance.
And having that digital connection between that when the county goes to it, that if there is a call routed, you'll get all the information on that call, where sometimes you don't get all that information.
thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
I just brought up a question with the last comment. So right now, if I call with an emergency from my cell phone, it is routed through the county, and it's a county dispatcher that dispatches, or does it come through Germantown then somehow?
It's a very seamless process. It goes from Washington County to our dispatchers.
Okay, so it doesn't really, there's no time delay more than a couple seconds, 10 seconds.
And I wouldn't know the exact time delay, but it's minimal.
It's negligible, essentially. And then I think my next question was this agreement that the gentleman, that people are signing on now. What happens if we don't sign on this year? We could sign on next year? So we don't have to get on the front wave of it, because I'm sure we want to in the future. But this gives us a couple years to save up the money for the amount of money that we're going to need. Like put some money away this year potentially, and then hop on next year sometime or the year after. And that will be okay. Because obviously AT&T will support this, as you said, for a few more years.
We're not planning on cutting the old circuits.
Yeah.
And if the county has IP and you don't, are they your backup right now, the county? They are. They are. So even if
Okay.
they're on IP and you're still on the analog, the backup will still work.
Okay. But it does make sense to make this change, and it's the future. And again, it's moving towards it. I think we have to plan correctly for it, so we don't get a big $300,000 hit like this year, hopefully, but to plan for it intelligently. So thank you for the information, both of you.
Trustee Jan Miller.
And it doesn't matter what kind of 911 call, fire or police, this goes through the same system, correct? Yeah, so the idea of sharing the cost between departments might be a good idea. That is all.
The dispatch itself, though, is located within the police department. And it's not a bad thought to see how that can be split across. Question I have, though, is if the county is already going to be signing on, does that then drive it to us that much faster once they're have an agreement in place with you? Okay. The last time that the state was involved with anything with communications with public safety, it had to do with, I think, the bandwidth of the radio systems, and we were changing over to a newer bandwidth, and that had to do with our tower. And that was a long, drawn-out, protracted system and steps that took a long time to kind of get worked through. Do you feel, Mike, being that you were also, I think, on board when that occurred, that this will be smoother than that was when we changed the radio system over?
I do, because I think as soon as this is up and running, it's kind of a matter, once the upgrades are there, it's a matter of flipping a switch, for lack of a
It's more
better
hardwired.
Right, and that was a lot of figuring out, interference and where the towers work the best. There was a lot of
repeaters and all that stuff.
a lot of
and
troubleshooting
Some
through that
buildings wouldn't
practice.
allow the
Correct.
transmission to go through. That was just it took a long process of it, as I remember. Okay, that makes sense. Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, There's been constituents that have asked this, so I'm going to ask it as well, and that is, we have the option to go to the county for dispatch. This has been brought up before. This isn't something new. And that is an option here. I think we'd have to look at the costs involved with that portion of it. I believe our dispatcher, our nightly dispatcher is a dual role right now, isn't it? Or is that just a dispatch?
Our dispatchers perform many clerical
Yeah.
roles as well.
Yeah, so we'd have to look at, what makes the most sense here. And all I'm saying is that I think we need to view that as one of the options, is see if going to a county dispatch, when this all transpires, if that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It might not be. It might be, beneficial to stay here.
Right. I was at the Chiefs Conference this past week, and I did have a lot of conversations with municipalities that went through a consolidation, and some decided to stay on their own, and a lot of discussions about cost savings. So I think there's a lot of information out there. Generally speaking, the cost savings is not what anybody thought it was going to be, simply because our dispatchers are doing so much that what you have to hire back personnel wise to take care of what they're doing is pretty, it's kind of, you're just hiring what you lost when you lost your dispatcher. You're replacing with clerical positions a lot of the time. A lot of other issues, but certainly, we anticipated there would be this discussion on this, and I will be able to put together any information that's necessary.
There's also a fear that our dispatch department could get recruited away to the county because they would need more positions than what they currently have. So it's something to consider and look at, I guess, when that option comes up. So it's not always a replacement of position or a loss of position. Sometimes they're more than happy to take a seasoned dispatcher and train them to this system, being that they've been doing it for a number of years. So there's other ways that we can look at accounting for additional officers if dispatch is looked at as a possibility of joining the county. Not that it is at this time, but I think those discussions will be had at that time. Any other questions? No other questions? We appreciate you coming. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is item F, the Accountant 1 job description. Give us more information and background on this item. We'll turn the meeting over to our village administrator, Steve Krecklow.
Thank you. As I believe the village board is aware, we have recently had a second vacant deputy clerk treasurer position open up in Village Hall. And when sitting down with the clerk treasurer, Ms. Braunschweig, we reviewed the positions and had a conversation, a discussion about whether the current staffing model with the titles and distribution of workload was appropriate, or whether some other changes we could make to make things a little bit more efficient. And as a result of that, we're recommending to the village board that we change one deputy clerk treasurer position to an accountant position that would report to Paula Winter, our senior deputy clerk treasurer, who focuses her time on payroll and some of the other accounting functionality. I think we need more focused resources in that area, and this would allow us to do that. The position description that you have before you was reviewed by General Government and Finance earlier this evening. We don't normally like to put it on the board agenda the same night, but with Labor Day coming up and a gap in between meetings and the importance of this position, we did put it on both agendas, hoping to move forward and receive authority to fill the position. And then the final thing that I would mention is that it is the same pay range. There are some different responsibilities, but it's the same level of position, and therefore there's no budgetary impact from the change that we're recommending.
Board?
I'll make the motion to approve the creation of the account one position for the clerk treasurer department as
Second.
presented.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Hudson.
What's the pay?
I don't know the pay range off the top of my head.
It's pay grade 2, so an estimate would be between 40 and 60,000 dependent on qualification.
So an associate's degree,
Is that a question?
so for experience, we've got associate degree and or equivalent training experience in accounting. And I do understand that the bachelor's degree is preferred. Do you want to list, and yes, Jen, it is a question. Do you want to list a number of years of experience that are required?
I think it depends on the type of experience.
4 years of experience in municipal setting preferred.
That's preferred. That's not required. And that's municipal setting.
I think on the other hand, if we got someone who applied directly out of school with a CPA without 2 years, we'd probably I'd want to take a pretty serious look at that individual. So, the 2 years are preferred, but it's possible that somebody without 2 years could meet the qualifications we need.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Further discussion. Trustee Jan Miller.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say there are 2 positions available or open right now? Okay, and are they both accountants or are they clerks?
So one is deputy clerk, deputy treasurer, and that is posted right now. And we will have interviews for that later this week. This is a change to one of those positions, and that's why it's coming forward. It's still within the same pay grade, but it's a different job description.
So does the deputy clerk do more admin than accounting or not? And still report to Paula? I'm just curious. I don't.
Okay. The deputy clerk, deputy treasurer would report directly to me still.
okay.
However, this would report to Paula Winter, the senior deputy treasurer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, this came through General Government and Finance tonight, and we wanted to get this on the agenda tonight just so it can get approved and get advertised. This to me is it's in the same pay grade as the clerk treasurer right now, so there is no difference in pay except for depending upon experience, but it's in the same grade. This is also something that kind of moves us back towards the finance department, whereas we consolidated the finance and clerks responsibilities and duties a few years ago. But it's now starting to migrate back the other way. So I think this is a step in the right direction.
Further discussion. No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum? Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Nightrider?
Aye.
Trustee Pieper? Aye. President Walter?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next item under new business is item G, Resolution 26-2022, resolution approving referendum language on sale of sewer and water services to the northeast corridor of Richfield. Give us some more background information on this new business item. I'll turn our meeting over to our village attorney, Brian Sadek. Brian.
All right. Before you is the resolution that sets the question of water and sewer utility service to Richfield. The question in my opinion, meets the requirements of the statute. Although in fairness, with a non-binding resolution, there are very few requirements. Basically, you need a question and you need an explanation or explanatory statement to explain what a yes or a no vote means. And so we look to do that and also tried to keep the question I don't want to say generic, that's probably not the correct term, but tried to make it as neutral as possible, that we didn't want to overly impact the vote based on the phrasing of the question. So we tried to make it neutral.
Questions? Trustee Jan Miller.
In the referendum itself, the question, shall the village of Germantown sell water and sanitary sewer service? I've been in sales all my life, and my mission is to create a profit. We are not selling water. I don't even know if the sewer 20% has been approved by Sewer PAC or MMSD or wherever we need to get the approval for additional funding, to Richfield. In the IGA, I believe it said 20% over cost.
Right.
So I think it's misleading because we're not selling the water and it's listed first. So we would be providing both of those things to Richfield, correct?
Certainly, we are providing the service to customers in Richfield, but they are customers. They pay for the service, and in my mind, that is selling the service to them. There is an exchange of service for.
But we're not doing it for water. We can't.
Sure. They're paying a fee.
There's a utility charge for both water and sewer.
We're just the conduit. We're not making a profit.
The rate is built so that there is it helps to build the reserve fund and cover costs for the running of the utility. So the rate, the utility isn't structured to create profit. It's structured to fund itself and also fund the need for future maintenance or any extension of that service to other areas within the village. Or wherever the board decides that they want to put water to. So the word profit doesn't fit. It is set up to fund itself in regards to the rates that you set. One of the reasons that the rates were changed was because we weren't funding the maintenance fund and it was running into the red. So that's why the increases went through the way they needed to go through. It's not really structured that way. And also to answer your question about the sewer utility, we would go through the PSC and they would tell us that the rate would be the same for water, but we don't need approval to set our sewer rate. That would be an agreement between us and Richfield. You still have the floor, Trustee.
I thought that we had to wait for Sewer PAC or MMSD to create, to get the percentage.
No, not for the percentage. The MMSD and Sewer PAC approvals are to expand the sewer service area, to include that area within our system. The amount that we charge for that service, whether it's our own or for somebody else, is totally within our own purview. There's no regulations as to how that's done, unlike water service. Water service to me is very much like any other regulated utility. So your, gas and electric, your telephone, all of those things, that because you have consumers that in many cases kind of need the service, that the government has stepped in and said, we're going to regulate the amount, the rate of return that you can make on providing the service to folks or selling the service to folks. And it's the same whether it's water or electric or phone. It's the same.
Isn't there a formula basically for the utility, water? Let's just take water, so that when we're billing, we're covering our maintenance cost. Is that correct?
Correct. The rate that we are authorized to charge by the Public Service Commission includes sufficient revenue to cover our costs for providing the service to our customers, as well as an allowable rate of return, enough to help us fund future projects, put a little bit of a reserve together, those types of concerns.
I still don't like the word sell.
Okay. Trustee Kaminsky.
A couple other words I really don't like either. And I think to make this a very straightforward referendum that gets right to the point of what we're really doing, I prefer to see wording along the lines of, shall the Village of Germantown permanently provide water and sanitary sewer service to a planned business park in the Village of Richfield according to the terms of an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Richfield, the Village of Germantown. Now, that's what it is. We're not providing this. I mean, if I just read this, I'd say there's a bunch of poor homeowners out there who don't have water. Now, I know part of that's going to be our educational process, but I mean, the honest version of this is we're providing this for a business park. And minimally, even if that doesn't make it in, I think we have to say permanently provide. Those two words are key to this. And I agree, we're not selling.
There is a residential component.
Not yet. I mean,
Yeah, but
apartments, apartments. Okay, business park and apartments
in Richfield, yeah.
in Richfield. Hill.
Trustee Hudson.
Yeah, I do understand the argument for the use of the word sell, but I'm not really hung up on that. But what I am hung up with is I would strongly like to see the words in perpetuity into this.
Permanently. People won't understand in perpetuity.
Permanently, however our attorney would like to.
So my concern with that is, in short, nothing is forever. You talk about numerous communities throughout southeastern Wisconsin who go into service agreements for utilities, whether it's water or otherwise, that change their approach. You have Franklin, who was provided service through Oak Creek, looks to change to Milwaukee as part of that process. Waukesha, whose original proposal included getting utility service through Racine, became, we're going to get utility service through Milwaukee. Things change. And while, I don't see Richfield coming off of our system anytime in the near future, forever is a very long time.
So thank you. Taxes are forever. But so if we leave it written like this is written as if it is an event or a one-time thing. And I would like to provide some clarification on the length of time or some event horizon to help our citizens understand exactly what we're doing here. I do agree with the way that is written and the use of the word sell. It sounds as if it's a one-time transaction. And I would like to figure out a way to better convey to our voters as to what this really means.
Convey or you're part of, I think the way that Brian wrote it, tried to keep it neutral. If we are starting to convey a message, then we're taking it off its neutrality of question and adding an agenda to the resolution
No,
question. Now, a perfect example of water in perpetuity not being in permanence would be a good example that I think this entire board has seen, is that there was a portion of water that we've serviced to Menominee Falls for 30 years that came off. They took that system off and took it onto their own. So that was in that respect to the agreement as part of the IGA of why we shared water with sewer with them over there. But mostly it was water. I think it was all water. But eventually, as their systems became more mature and their need and development occurred more in that corridor, they came off of it. So there is change in possibility where Richfield could choose to drill their own wells.
So I want to be perfectly clear, and if I misspoke, I apologize.
Oh, you didn't
I
mistake.
am not criticizing this as being biased
Okay.
or unclear. That is not a criticism of mine. I am just saying with this wording, it makes it sound as if it is a transactional event. Transactional being one time or short term, when in reality, the IGA is not a transactional, it is not transactional. I'm just trying to clarify that. I am not criticizing the efforts that have been made.
The second part of the question tends to cover some of that argument. Pursuant in terms of an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Richfield and the Village of Germantown. So it's not a one-time event. And the IGA, as part of the information shared, would be out there as well. And I don't discount what you're saying, and I know what you're looking to provide as part of the question, because there are those that aren't as aware that are out there voting, and you want to cover what is really occurring in regards to the services going to Richfield. I understand that. Trustee Kaminsky.
I'll even remove my effort to put business park in there. But we do need to have the word provide. It is a service and is being provided. I totally agree with Mr. Scott. I forgot your last name, so I'll have to call you Mr. Scott. But I totally agree with your comments in the public comment section of this meeting. It's a service and we're providing it to them at a cost. But we're not, you don't sell police service, you don't sell fire service, you don't sell water and sewer service. You provide it. And I think that's a more honest term. We're providing it. And it's not a one-time event. And if we don't want to use permanently provide because things can change, then we have to say for the foreseeable future, or some other words that do cap that this is not going to only be a year or two. This is something that could affect us for our lifespans, certainly here, not just on the village board, but in general. It's going to be a very long-term event, and we all know that. And I think it's important to put that right up front in the referendum, that this is not just a short-term thing, that they're going to basically be coming to the, no pun intended, the well consistently for many years to come. And that has to be reflected in here. However, whatever words you want to choose, I think that definitely should be in here.
So why doesn't the words to the terms of an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Richfield and the Village of Germantown cover that part?
Because it has no dates, it has no
There are no
timeline in
dates.
there.
There are no dates, and as you know, with the IGA that we currently have at Grace Lutheran Church, with the sewer and water services that we have over there, there's no dates on
Don't go to
those.
Grace Lutheran Church. Let's talk about the Village of Richfield, and it is in their agreement with us that they want this to go on forever until they don't need us anymore. And in fact, they want to add on more things in the future. That's how it's written. So no, just to say in pursuant, and I would say according to, the terms of an intergovernmental agreement, nobody knows what's in that agreement. Nobody's going to take the time to read it. And if we're trying to be honest and straightforward, the two words have to be in there, provide, and some type of time frame, foreseeable future, permanently, whatever you want to use.
Trustee Jan Miller.
In the intergovernmental agreement, maybe Brian can speak to this. I know I read in perpetuity. It's in the intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, there you go.
I do not know what line it is.
You're right. The requirement that they provide easements for our pipes is,
Yes.
the easements are in perpetuity. That's just a standard term in an easement.
Well, if they're putting pipes in the ground connecting to Germantown and they didn't want to negotiate anymore with Jackson, which is close, what would make us think that they'd go someplace else? If you talk to people in Richfield, they just say, we don't want to pay more taxes. We'll take it from you. In addition to that, the last line in, before you say yes or no vote, what is what? It says, a copy of the intergovernmental agreement is available for inspection at the clerk's office, at the village clerk's office. Do you want people, you're going to make people run down to the village clerk, poor Deanna, and she's going to be filing this thing out, or maybe she has to laminate it. I don't know. Are you going to check it out like a library book? Can it be online?
Yes, certainly it can be online. The language that's used to reflect that it is on file in the clerk's office is the same language that is used for virtually every approval that requires some document to be on file is at the clerk's office. It doesn't mean we can't put it on the website or that we couldn't, scroll it on channel 25, each page, every couple seconds. I mean, we can do whatever we want with it. The language of being on file in the clerk's office is just standard language within the statutes for where there's some document that becomes controlling. You have to be able to go and look for it.
Oh, okay. So we don't know if Channel 25 is going to work on certain days right now because we're waiting for a part. And the other thing is if you put it online, if you don't put a big button on the front page and you have to make 15 clicks to get it, it's not right, because this is a referendum.
You're not going to get any disagreement with me on that. I think the broader and more distribution of the intergovernmental agreement, the better. It's part of the educational campaign. I don't have any disagreement with everything that you're saying on that point.
We're not selling water and sewer, we're providing it, and it's in perpetuity, and I think it should be.
The motion is as the language states. If you
Well, I
would
don't
wish
agree
to
with
change it, then you can offer a amendment.
We don't have a motion, though.
Yes, we do. We don't?
No, we don't.
Okay. But the proposed motion is as it's stated, and if you want to make a motion to go forward for approval and change the language, you're free to do that. Right now, it's just pretty much in discussion, but a motion would be good to start.
So if I could,
Mhm.
just, in terms of, again, the idea being that, the statutes talk about being able to be neutral with your question, that you shouldn't be selling your position in the question in an ideal world. Now, obviously it happens all the time, I'll tell you that. But that's what the statute and the law contemplates is that you are being neutral with doing that. It is my opinion, and I'm sure that all four of you who are otherwise nodding your head that we got to get rid of sell is incorrect, that by using provide, you are not accurately representing the transaction that's being provided. Just as Trustee Hudson talks about, we provide police service, we provide fire service. These are things that are, to most people, free. It's part of my taxes. And, I recognize that I pay taxes, but I'm not paying an additional fee for those services. The cell represents, in my opinion, the better reflection of what that transaction is. There is an actual exchange. You get the service, we get money for providing it.
And if I could just fairly briefly add on to the village attorney's comments that there are, if you look at generally accepted accounting principles as set by the Government Accounting Standards Board, water and sewer are set up as enterprise funds. And enterprise funds are, by definition, the definition of an enterprise fund is a business-like activity. And a business-like activity that provides services at a fee that on a cost recovery basis. Therefore, it is a sale of goods and services, as opposed to general fund activities like police and fire that are not done on a cost recovery basis, but are paid for out of property taxes.
See that?
Trustee Hudson.
I'd like to make a motion to phrase the referendum question as follows. Shall the Village of Germantown provide water and sewer service for a fee to a portion of the Village of Richfield, and then continue on?
That's your motion. We have a second.
That's my motion.
Have a second? Okay, motion made and seconded. Discussion, Trustee Kaminsky.
Are you comfortable not having the permanents in there?
I,
How about for the foreseeable future, or just, are you okay with it the way it is?
So I have two comments. One is a comment, one is a suggestion. Again, service to me covers the perpetual nature that as long as you're getting the service, you're being charged the fee. That seems to me to be ongoing in my mind. If you wanted to change it, I think you could add what would be based on the motion after for a fee, you could add on an ongoing basis.
I like that.
I'll take it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Do we have a motion to amend that, or is that your motion as presented?
As presented.
Is that okay with the second?
As long,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion?
Repeat the motion, please.
me or Dean?
You have it, Deanna, or I got it.
Shall the Village of Germantown sell water and sanitary sewer?
Nope.
No, provide.
Nope.
Provide.
Okay.
All right, here. So it's, shall the Village of Germantown provide water and sanitary sewer service for a fee on an ongoing basis to customers in a portion of the Village of Richfield pursuant to the terms of an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Richfield and the Village of Germantown?
I'll take that.
Further discussion? Trustee Kaminsky.
I think it's a good compromise. I think it is. I think it encapsulates it without being pushy in either direction.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I abstain.
One opposed, one abstains. Motion carries. Next item under new business is item I, creation of,
Um, oh, I thought we were doing,
Um,
excuse me,
Mhm.
question. I thought we were doing this by paragraphs. Is it the whole thing?
that is the question.
It's the question.
That'll be on the, as it was stated.
Okay, I get that, but then below it, it says explanatory statement.
Alter that in the future, or is that?
Is that, can you say something in that last sentence? A copy of the intergovernmental agreement is available for inspection at the clerk's office or online or something?
Is that going to be on the ballot like that?
Can it be on the ballot like that?
That's what would be on the ballot,
That
but
would
this
make
is,
sense on the ballot.
this
Well,
is normal kind
Those
of
are the,
language.
the explanatory statement's done on the ballot. I don't think it's just posted at the,
Altered or not? Is it tonight, the night for that, Karen?
tonight's really the night for that. I guess the question, initial question, trustee Hudson, was your motion for the full resolution based on that wording of the question, or were you looking to address just the question?
I was addressing only the referendum question itself.
So it wasn't for the resolution, it was just the question on the resolution?
I didn't. It did not include the explanatory. the statement below.
Okay. Okay, so.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 26, 2022 as amended.
Motion made. Do we have a second? Motion made and seconded. Discussion. This
I'd
is
like to
kind of
amend-
boilerplate information, basically.
I'd like to amend that explanatory statement and effective a vote to make sure that the last sentence says at the village clerk's office or online.
That's your motion to amend?
That's my motion to amend,
Do
please.
we have a second? Motion made and seconded. Motion made to amend. Do we have any discussion on that motion to amend?
Oh, I have another amendment.
Well, one at a time, please.
Yep.
Further discussion on the motion to amend. Everybody understand what is being amended? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Back to the motion as amended. Further discussion.
I would like to clean up the third paragraph. Once again, it says, intergovernmental, a yes vote would result in the execution of the negotiated intergovernmental agreement so that the Germantown would sell water and sanitary sewer service to customers in the northeast corner of the village of Richfield. I think it should emulate what we did in the referendum question by taking sell out and putting in the provide water and sanitary service for a fee on an ongoing basis to customers in a portion of the village of Richfield or northeast quarter of the village of Richfield.
Can you,
It's following exactly what we did in the referendum question. Taking the word sell out, putting in provide.
I'll second that.
motion made to amend and seconded. Discussion. No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstain.
One opposed, one abstains. Further discussion on the motion to amend as or motion as amended. Mr. Kaminsky.
Again, we're trying to be neutral in this, correct?
Correct.
Because this is going to be, okay. So is it not neutral to say business park and residential customers? Or does it not matter?
My concern, I guess, with that, while it's technically correct as we sit here today, the intergovernmental agreement does not
Specify.
mandate that that's what it ends up being. They could change it. So I'd, hate to have them say, yes, that's okay for a business park, and then end up being I don't know what else it would be, but it's going to be a business park, but.
Could be a water park.
Yep, they could do whatever they want.
But it does have the intergovernmental agreement does stress the amount of gallons in and the amount of gallons out.
Correct.
Further discussion on a motion to amend? No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
trustee Kaminsky, trustee Baum,
Abstain.
trustee Hudson,
Aye.
trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Nightrider,
No.
trustee Pieper,
Aye.
President Walter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, takes care of item I. We'll go to item J, appointments to the special committee overseeing village communication activities related to the referendum on the sale of.
Aye.
Oh, you're right. Aye, sorry. Creation of special committee overseeing village communication activities related to the referendum on the sale of water and sewer services to the northeast corridor of the village of Richfield. Village administrator.
Yes, thank you. So we added this item on the agenda as a follow-up to the communications consultant contract that the village board approved at their last meeting. We've had a couple of planning meetings with Miller Communications on that process. One of the things that they've recommended and staff is recommending is due to the time constraints and the importance of getting information out to the village residents as quickly as possible, that the village board form a special committee that would have responsibility for reviewing and approving communication methods and means that would go out to the public. Since it is not feasible or that with the time involved, and especially since there's only one meeting in September, that the entire village board would be able to be involved in that process. Also, just as a side note on the topic of the communications, so that folks are aware, as part of the first step in the process, we did provide Miller Communication with I don't want to say all of the documents, but all of the presentations that were made to the village board, so they have that as they're beginning work on the process. All of the agreements, all of the reports that were completed, and I'll just mention as well as Ms. Smythe's questions and the responses that were provided.
Questions? Motion? Trustee Jan Miller.
So just so I'm clear, what you're saying is that you gave Miller Communications all the presentations that were presented to the village board, the actual agreement itself, and any publications we did, like Q&A and things like that. Is that right?
Correct, and
Okay.
copies of questions that were submitted at the special meeting that we had at the high school, if you recall that, all of that information.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Hudson.
Did Miller Communication get the hydrologist presentation from last December? I think that was last November or December.
They did get the, I'm not sure if we're referring to the same thing. They did get the report that the hydrologist did on well number 12.
I'm referencing the report where the hydrologist came to the village board meeting and talked about what was going on with our wells over a long period of time, where the water in Germantown originates and how water moves underground. That's the presentation I'm referencing. I can't remember his name. I apologize.
I believe that was on, if I recall, I believe I'm thinking of the correct presentation. That was, and I don't believe he was a hydrologist. That was a expert on, and now I've got to remember the term, but basically organic corrosion of the equipment that we had.
That's we're talking about the same presentation, yes.
Yeah. That was, it actually was the water superintendent, Paul Haugen, had arranged for that. And like I said, I believe he was a microbiologist who was talking about the issue with our well on Mequon Road that had some corrosion issues. We've had to replace the equipment on a regular basis.
We're talking about the same presentation.
Correct.
Did we give the communications firm that presentation or no?
We did not, because that was, it was, and I believe as part of the follow-up conversation, he did talk about his thoughts on the aquifer and the movement of microorganisms through the aquifer, but I don't believe that was directly related to the topic of well 12 and the impact that would have on wells. We can provide that to Miller Communications, but I believe it was a different topic.
I would like to provide that to Miller Communications. I think that's critical information for the citizens of our village.
Trustee Miller, Jan Miller.
I agree with Trustee Hudson. And the reason is, and I'm sure Larry can state the facts. We're not taking water out of just well 12. And if this agreement would go through, it's not well 12 going over to Richfield. It's a combination of all the wells. Isn't the water mixed, Larry? Sorry, I made you get up.
What'd you get from sitting in the back of the room there?
I know you're trying to be
Jeff sits right up
incognito.
front, that way he's just got a short walk.
That's why nobody calls on him.
So to answer your question, maybe. The well 12 and the tower being built in TID 8 area is going to be built at a higher elevation than the rest of the water system that exists today. But the interconnection of the two water systems does exist for safety of the system and security of the system, that if one well were to go down, or a well and tower in the existing system were to go down, we could supply water from the high pressure here. With the booster station that will be constructed on Goldendale Road, we can take the water from the existing system in the low landing area like we're in now and pump it up into the tower in TID 8. So the two systems do interact, but when we fill the existing 3 towers, as they do now, they run all the wells to fill all the towers at one time. That won't necessarily fill the Tower 4 up in TID 8 on Rockfield Road. So yes, the systems are connected, but on a regular daily operational basis, they won't be. Does that answer your question? Does it answer your question?
I think so. So, but the well 12 is the closest to the new number 4 water tower.
Yes, it's on the same piece of land.
And
they're right next
the
to each other.
pumping station is there too, right?
Correct. Pumping station will be built on top of top of well 12, and will fill Tower 4, which is right on that same land. And through interconnection on Goldendale Road, it can supply water down here to Village Hall if needed. Or we can take the water from well 11 and pump it through the booster station and fill Tower 4.
Is the water treated at all?
The water
12.
out of well 12 will be treated, but not for radium removal. The shallow well will have, and it's been tested, has no radium in it.
Chlorine, fluoride.
So we'll do chlorine, we'll do fluoride additional.
Thank you.
No, we do not.
I'll make a motion to create a special committee overseeing village communication of this issue.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. You kind of had it. No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. One abstains. Next item, Jay? Appointments to the special committee overseeing village communication activities related to the referendum on the sale of water and sewer services to the northeast corridor of the village of Richfield. Village administrator, anything to add?
Just simply that this would be then the process of appointing, which I believe the appointments would be made by the village president and approved by the village board.
Input? Questions? We're looking for 3 people?
My recommendation would be to keep it small. It is going to be a challenge to try to coordinate schedules and get people involved. I guess if I could go further, my recommendation would be that there be at least one trustee on sort of each side of the issue. These meetings will have to be, publicly noticed and open to the public, although I think it'd be possible and probably more convenient to do a number of them online in order to make it easier to accommodate individual schedules. And we can do that and still meet the public notice requirements.
Okay. So based on that information, my appointments would be to suggest the village president, trustee Kaminsky, and trustee Miller.
Which
Rick
Miller?
Miller. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. No discussion?
Are they available? Are you available?
Yes. Part of my reasoning for trustee Kaminsky is based on the side of the issue that she expounds, and also her marketing background is valuable to us here, being that we're dealing with a marketing service. And then Rick Miller sits on the other side of it and is also part of a GGF. So that's why I'm recommending those two. Myself, I will be neutral. I've always been neutral. I've always said it. It doesn't matter to me. Trustee Hudson.
I'd like to point out that 67% of the trustees were against the agreement, and now we're creating a commission that is a 50-50 split. So we're in effect, we're not,
67.
yeah, it was a 6-3 vote, I believe. So that would be.
For the referendum, based on the motion to amend to choose the referendum.
No, I think
yes.
we rejected it the first time around, 6-3, did we not? If my memory is correct.
Right.
And then we reconsidered it.
Yes, based on your bringing it forward for reconsideration, yes.
Last time we discussed it was 5-4.
Okay, I mean, right now, we're just looking for a short path for information of presenting to the public, which everybody has, input to, but we're just trying to keep it to a minimum so it can get out there fast. But it won't, it has to be neutral in its base, because it's in regards to a referendum, even though there's no state statute directing this, because this is not a binding referendum. We're still going to adhere to those rules so that that information is presented unbiased and fairly to the public as they decide in November. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is item K, Village Center Zoning District and Next Generation Housing Site Assessment. Turn the meeting over to our village administrator. Give us some more information and background on this new business item.
Thank you. Earlier this summer, the Economic Development Committee met and had a topic of discussion related to next generation housing and development in the Village Center District. And I know there's been a lot of attention paid to the county's initiative on next generation housing. There was a fairly lengthy discussion on next generation housing and where it might fit, where it might not fit. And at the end of the day, the Economic Development Commission approved a motion which directed staff to work with Washington County to submit a proposal to utilize some of the county's funds to hire a consultant to work with Germantown to look at the feasibility of next generation housing, appropriate locations for next generation housing, and in particular in the Village Center District, and then looking at zoning changes in zoning code or other village ordinances that would be necessary to allow for that. And we have worked with county staff. They have been using for projects of this nature Vanderwall Consulting, and they submitted the attached draft proposal. We did meet with them later in the week and had some conversations. I think this is a draft. There are some suggestions that staff has for changes. For example, instead of looking at only 2 potential sites and whether they might be feasible, looking at 3. But they do cover the elements that were discussed by the Economic Development Commission, albeit in a different order. Their proposal is looking at the zoning code and changes first. They are included in the proposal a community engagement meeting to invite in members of the public for input, and would look at various sites within the Village Center District for their feasibility and whether or not they would be a good fit for next generation housing.
Trustee Pieper.
I just want to point out that these funds are coming from the county. These are not coming from our budget, first off. Second, Van de Waal is going to put together a proposal to present to us. We do not have to accept it. We do not have to take it on. It is simply a proposal of what they're thinking of next gen housing. By no means does this mean we are putting next gen housing all over the village or even in one area. This is simply a proposal that we do not need to adapt with money that is not ours, it's from the county.
There's a portion of their ARPA funding. Trustee Rick Miller.
So question is, when I read this, it looked like we're just looking at the village center. Is this a feasibility study? Is that really what this is? Or is this, hey, let's see if this fits in and we'll provide an entire plan for the village center?
It is, and there's, well, and I should have mentioned there are some optional tasks attached to this as well. I think it begins with a feasibility study. It is focused on the village center, and I think in part because that's where, most likely the zoning codes would most be necessary to allow for this, in terms of what the density might look like, some of the other requirements for housing in that area. So I think it does go a little bit beyond feasibility. It would be a first step, and I think the first step is to kind of define for the village to define where and under what conditions is next generation housing desirable in the village center, if at all. And then after that, looking at the zoning codes that would be necessary to make those changes. And then the next steps would be to work on specific sites, if there are any that are acceptable.
So village center, I should know this, but refresh my memory. What are the boundaries?
No, and I may refer.
I know other people are going to ask.
Yeah.
So,
It's part of the 2050 plan.
okay, all right.
But it shows, Jeff can probably give us some information about that.
I mean, generally Mequon Road on the south, Pilgrim and the railroad that diagonally cuts across Pilgrim to the east, Fond du Lac Avenue, Highway 145 to the north, and the Blackstone Creek Golf Course.
Okay,
Menominee
that's the
River
one I
to the
wasn't
west.
sure of, to the west. All right. So River Lane.
Yes, and a little bit west of that.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
Can somebody define for me what next generation housing is?
The definition that, or the goal or the objective that the county is using at this point is that for next generation housing projects, 75% of the housing units would be available for purchase at less than $300,000, and 25% would be available for purchase at less than $400,000.
25% less than 400, okay. And does anybody know how much next generation housing we currently have in the village?
I don't have any specific numbers. I would say of the new housing, probably none.
Does it have to be new housing? Most people, when they're starting out, buy a small ranch home, of which we have 8 billion. But I mean, seriously, I mean, boy, my dream would have been to get a brand new home when I bought my first home. Yeah, but That was just a question. Okay, and who pays? So it's the Washington County's paying for this, so we know how all of this is going to be skewed because this is their baby and they want to really push this in. So then let's keep that in mind. What happens if we don't buy into this? If we say no to this?
Right. The way that Washington County set up the funding sources were that there are three major pilot projects that are underway in other communities within Washington County. There are 6 communities that are not involved in the pilot projects. They allocated $50,000 apiece for startups for this kind of thing. And in essence, it's for each community to determine if they want to participate, how they would want to participate, where they would want to participate. Then there's a next level of funding, another $500,000 that's available for communities that do decide to participate to work on specific projects. This is not anything we would have to pay back, or if that was the question, if we decide not to go further. But it really is intended for communities to take on this type of exercise to determine what you'd like to do.
I seriously would like to get a feel, and I think our realtors will have a good feel for this. How much of our current housing stock, whether it be condos or single-family homes, fall into these categories of 75%, 300,000 or less, to 25%, 400 or less? I would like to know that before I would proceed with this. I mean, sure, they could do it if you want to spend $16,400, but I'd like to kind of know that almost beforehand. And also these pilot projects, I certainly wouldn't go any further until these pilots prove that something is really happening and something's going on that's positive for those communities. I certainly couldn't buy into this for Germantown. I mean, this kind of just flying in out of left field. At one point, it was attached to selling water and sewer to Richfield, and they were going to, Washington County was going to come along and give us this great, I shouldn't say affordable housing, next generation housing benefit, okay? So, I mean, to me, this is all just coming out of left field, like we can't plan ourselves in Germantown, that we're not smart enough to figure out what our residents need and provide for them. And I'm just somewhat offended by that because we've been doing this for a number of years and we have a core of apartments, and I understand we have the correct percentage of apartments, maybe a little over now. We have a core in the center of the city of affordable condominiums. And I mean, literally, maybe not 1 billion, but we have 1,000 small ranch homes that are perfect starter homes. I don't know what the price of them are right now, but I mean, I'm just baffled by this. So,
This gives us 2 avenues of opportunity. The first one is to look at a zoning district that allows for this type of a density and a multi-use development to occur within the village, and what does that look like? Secondly, it gives us a kind of an accounting of what we are as getting to, and I'm going to go down your road. I got to be careful. Next gen housing and what that looks like. But I think within that study, I think your information you're requesting would come out as well, being that maybe this area isn't as desirable because you already have X, or because you already have Y within your district that you're asking. So I think that can be part of this direction, and that information can be flushed out as part of this program. What it does for me is it helps to first of all, get more information about what next gen housing is or looks like, and then also helps to define it for the residents, because as you go through a practice like this, that information tends to come out and become available for residents to look at and say, yeah, this is a good idea for us, or no, I don't think this is a good idea for us for that reason. So that's why I like it. But more importantly, I like it for the opportunity to have, I'm not going to say uninterested, but an unbiased third party, someone in by, I know the county, is working with them. And if they're truly professionals, they shouldn't be selling that mantra. They shouldn't. But it allows us to look at our community center and have them say, if you're looking for the development of this area for, let's call it your downtown Germantown, this is the type of things that we think you should look at for zoning and what type of density would work when they look at places like Mequon and Sussex and Menominee Falls and Thiensville and now Brookfield as well for what their community centers are. I think I happened to drive up Moreland, actually Blue Mountain Road, up to Gerke's Corners, and they raised that whole corner of that area across from the Four Corners or the corners of Brookfield. And that's going to be their community center. That's the town of Brookfield's community center. That's where they're going to put it, right there. If you look at it, part of their initiative is already established to the outside, to the north. They have a fair amount of multifamily, four-story multifamilies built there already in that background, but that's what they're touting as it. And I think that we need to see if that is something that works for us. Not to that degree and not in that same way, but what does that look like for Germantown?
May I? Is this similar to Thiensville, like where they've really developed that Mequon-Thiensville corridor? Is that what we're thinking of? Because I like the look of it.
Yes.
I like the idea, but those places above those doors are not cheap. I don't,
There
that,
can be, and I agree with you, because they're, in most cases, they have the amenities that are, and they may be rentals or they may be condominiums. But with that, and within that development, you could look at sectioning something towards the outside that could fit, or what does it look like to fit the criteria? Again, I kind of know what it looks like because of, and I keep bringing this back, and I don't want to push it in anybody's, but it's the experience I have. My daughter lives in Verona. They just bought a house in Oregon. That house is within, across the street from them are side-by-sides, and behind them are single families, and then there's a golf course that the single families back up to. Their block is what I would call this area. It's 12 to 1,400 square feet, and it's under $300,000. That's their starter home. And that's kind of how I look at, how would that look here? Would it look similar to what they've got there, or would it be different? And is that acceptable to us? But we really, if we don't know what it looks like, we don't know what to agree or disagree on.
and when I think about the village center as it was defined, I'm at a loss of imagining a lot of open areas to do anything other than building above, like apartments that go up. Remember the big fight we had about 3 stories on the apartment complex that we currently have in our village center?
Yes.
And how that was nixed, and so now it looks like what it does, and it could have looked 100% better.
True.
So that is my experience with, and that's expensive, that place actually. But, so you have that, where's all the extra empty area unless you go above stores?
There's,
Or you take down all the condos downtown, that'd be popular. But seriously, there's not a lot of space, just a thought.
well, and as you look at a community center, you're hoping that they're pointing out some of those opportunities for us. Trustee Hudson.
So this, but, you know, this is by no means unbiased. Just looking at the paragraph under task 1, it says, we'll prepare text for new village center zoning district that will enable development of next generation housing. And then it goes on and it says the definition of next generation housing will be determined by Washington County with input by VNA, the inventory work group, and other stakeholders. So I don't know it. When I read this draft, I don't know what the definition of next generation housing is. I know what certain members of this board believe it to be, but just by reading this, that definition can change. It might be $300,000, it might be $200,000, it might be some other number. And that number is going to be defined by Washington County. So that concerns me. But then it also goes on, V&A will work with the village staff to determine how best to incorporate the new zoning language into the village existing zoning ordinance. So this is not an unbiased group. They are going to find areas to put next generation housing
As a recommendation.
as a recommend. I don't know what next generation housing is, and they're not giving me a definition. And I'm supposed to support this?
As a study and as information found and presented, it doesn't force you to put it in. It says that if it would occur in this area, this is what it would look like based on the definition that we currently know it to be, which is 75% of $300,000 and 25% under $400,000. That's the definition we're getting today. They're not saying that you must put next generation housing in. This money covers the cost for them to look at the area that we've designated and say, based on this perimeter, we think that it could work here in this way. But it doesn't mean you have to do it, but it also allows an ordinance or the outline of an ordinance to be created that allows for that type of a development. Because currently our ordinances without putting a PPD over the top of it doesn't allow for those types of densities or those types of mixed uses. And the simple reason for the need of that, if you talk to the staff or any of the people in government in Sussex or Mequon or Thiensville or Brookfield, they say that in order for us to establish a village center and the activities that happen within a village center, you must create a special ordinance for zoning. That's what this helps us get towards.
I strongly support a village center. What I don't support is voting for something that I can't define, or the definition of what I'm voting for can change based on what Washington County wants to do with it.
So based on that debate point, you would rather not have any information provided to you to see what that looks like so that decision could be made? Because it's a recommendation.
I'd like a definition of the phrase next generation housing. I'd like Washington County to give me a definition of the words that they are using.
What Steve has presented to us tonight is he goes to the meetings that talk specifically at West Bend about next gen housing and what they feel it's going to look like. So basically the definition that he's presented is what they've told him it is today. That's what it is for next gen housing. It falls within that parameter of 75% of the development of whatever it is for that housing group has to be at $300,000 and 25 has to be under $400,000.
But that could change tomorrow.
But we don't have to do anything though.
We still don't have to do anything about it. And if it changes tomorrow, then they show us what that looks like if they're going to incorporate that change. But it can't be that fluid to where if someone is going out and creating this study, all of a sudden, well, it changed tomorrow. Okay, well, we start over. And then now it changed next week. Okay, we start over. I mean,
when we first started talking about next generation housing, if I remember correctly, when the county executive came here, his definition was housing units of less than $140,000.
Well, that was
approximately 16 months ago, if memory serves correct.
That was pie in the sky.
Well, that's what he said. That's what the definition was then.
Inflation kicked in.
And there it is.
Inflation is rampant, but it is not that high.
What this does, and I think we're getting really hung up on the next gen part of this. What this does is it starts to create and give us information of how we can create an ordinance that allows for the development of that area. It doesn't say that it must incorporate next gen, but since it's coming from money at the county, it must have that component tied to it, or we don't get the money. That's how it So we get two benefits from it. Not only do we get the definition and the look of what next gen housing is at the time that this is presented to us, but we also get information of how to create our ordinance as part of that money that we're not paying for. Otherwise, we would have to go out and get somebody to help us develop that ordinance. Here it is. They're helping us do it. This is what they do. Why not use that input that these experts provide to help us generate our ordinance? They're not writing it for us. They're just creating the information that helps us to write it.
Thank you for your explanation.
You're welcome. Trustee Jan Miller.
Thank you. Thank you for the floor. So within our midst, we have Steve Krecklow, who is on the Next Generation Housing Committee for Washington County. In addition to that, Lynn Gergich is also on the committee. And they were both present at the economic development meeting that we had on the 11th of July. So we have spent, I'm just going to take a stab at this, Mr. Retzloff, about $120,000 with GRAFE, would you say, Jeff? On the 2050 plan.
Yes, that's our contract.
That's a contract.
Yes.
We have a whole section about the village center, do we not? Jeff, is that right? Yes. There, on the back page, it says allowable, desirable, undesirable. It's categorized. Every one of our neighborhoods is categorized. And we can debate this for a long time, but there's some elements that we should know. What is the definition of next generation housing? On page 145 of your 2050 plan, the primary goal, I'm quoting, the primary goal of Next Generation Housing Initiative is to provide governmental services and support to participating municipalities in the county, meaning Washington County, that will foster the creation of attainable, in parentheses, affordable housing options. The goal of providing 1,000 new single-family owner-occupied housing units with 75% having a lot and home cost under $300,000 and 25% under $400,000 by the year 2030. Now, what we didn't discuss is that Josh Schulman made an appearance on Friday. It was nice for him to come, and I had the opportunity to stop in at 10:30 and listen to what he had to say. And I quoted that, and he asked me to send it to him because he said, well, it's changed now. It's changed. The next generation housing can be multi-unit. It seems to be morphing. So I think that we should also understand that there is a pilot program, right? And we, the Village of Germantown, are not done with our 2050 plan. We're approaching, but we're working on it. We're working on it very hard. And the reality is the villages that are the whole Washington County idea is to use $10 million of the ARPA funds for this next generation housing. They've put aside 7.4 or 7.5 million for a pilot program. There are three that I know of, municipalities that are involved and for this startup. And one of them is Jackson, and they're getting the 2.4 million. Well, you can go a long way with that. But I think one of the things that we're not considering is we can ask our residents what they want a neighborhood to look like. And I am sure if you like Mequon or you like Thiensville, they don't have condos that are $300,000. in that downtown area, or they're going to have very few. And ultimately, I think we have to be the owners of our own destiny. And we've had people here almost every meeting, you know, saying, why don't we have this? Why don't we have more parks? We don't know if we can acquire land. We just have a territory right now. And free money is not free if you don't understand the information. And perhaps Jeff actually knows how many units that we have, or single family homes that are 300,000 or 400,000 in the village of Germantown. In addition to that, he will also know what the mix is between apartments and the single family homes. I did an exercise for Josh Schulman, and I worked with a realtor, and I said, if you were in this program, you get $300,000 to build a single family home. Washington County is also going to give you a $20,000 forgivable loan. And Josh said, no, we raised it to $25,000. I said, okay, that's new. But if you, I said what it said in the literature is the loan is forgivable. And I said, why are you doing that? And he said, no, it's not a forgivable loan anymore. You have to pay it back or spend time giving service back to the village. I said, who's going to count that? Who's going to be in charge of that? He said, oh, the county is. All right. So if you want to go buy a home today, typically you would put, and Dave, you can correct me, 20% down. But that doesn't happen anymore, he said. Well, I said, typically you'd have to have a credit score of 700. And he said, well, we're lowering it to 640. Now all the expectations are going down. And I said, if you did that at 300,000 and you use the $20,000 or $25,000 on that mortgage, your PITI would be $1,900. And that would be almost $23,000 annually. And if you're a single person and you're living in Washington County, your average income is just under 40,000. So that's not affordable. And he said, oh no, we're not doing it for single people. It has to be a couple. So I think it's nice to get free money, but I think that we could sit back, finish our own plan, and then see how the pilot programs come out.
So, go ahead.
So that's my recommendation. The plan seems to be morphing as more information comes to light.
So I understand your recommendation. Your recommendation is to not accept the ARPA funds from the county until we see what the pilot programs look like?
That's it. Pretty much. That's my motion.
And so then we don't get the side benefit of creating a zoning district that allows us to look at how we could develop our community center?
Why don't we use the 2050 plan for that?
Because there isn't an ordinance on the books that defines it. You still have to create the ordinance. You don't have the zoning in place. You'd still have to create the zoning. And
why
this
do we
would help us to create that and define it as to what it looks like and what its definitions are for the type of density in the area, the type of development in the area, the size of the buildings, the height of the buildings, how they can be spaced apart, if they can be commercial, business, non-industrial, professional, and with residential, without having to create a PPD or any type of overlay to do it. It creates the actual zoning that's specific to the village center, no other area of the village, just the village center. And that's how Sussex and Thiensville and Mequon and Brookfield create their village centers. Their step one is to create the zoning that allows it to occur. We don't have that. This helps us to get there and to create those definitions and also give us an idea of if it's feasible. The small component of it that's funding it, because we're also throwing into it the other component that's next gen housing, that allows the funding to come from the county as part of ARPA. My interest in this is to get this outside help to create the ordinance that allows the village center to expand. The other part of next gen housing, fine, nice information. Thank you very much. I like it. Let's see if it fits or what it looks like, but that's not my main interest with it. My main interest is to get the zoning for the village center, and that's what this helps us do without taking the monies out of our budget or our reserves or our ARPA funds. The county is very stingy to its municipalities in regards to passing out those types of monies. They think county first, and then after that, if we got something left over, okay, well, we can give you this. And that's what you're getting, the crumbs. We're getting the crumbs because we're not part of that pilot program, and we're not part of anything to say, we want next gen housing, sign me up. So because we're not jumping on his bandwagon totally, we're just kind of watching it go by, they're allowing us 40,000, what is it, 50,000 to do a study to see if it fits our community. But with that study, we get the outline of what that ordinance, that zoning looks like for the village center. That's benefit us. That's how I look at it.
I think there's too many assumptions, and I think I have a question for Jeff.
The assumptions are within this document as far as what they're going to do and how they're going to do it.
I have a question for Jeff. Jeff, in every one of our neighborhoods, I think that's what they're called, village center per se. If you flip, you have a nice diagram, got a great map, you flip it over and it says allowable, desirable, undesirable. What is the difference between designating those categories and actually writing an ordinance? Don't we have staff to write an ordinance?
Sure. There you go. Sorry.
Yes, there is staff to write ordinances.
Great.
However, we don't have enough staff to write the amount of ordinances and the amount of follow-up plan to implement the 2050 plan to do it in the time that's necessary, or in the priority order that's being requested through the 2050 plan. And I would say this, if I could take a step back, I agree with all of the skepticism about the NGH program. I think we all share in that skepticism because right from the get-go, it's undefined. It's loosely defined. It's ill-defined, whatever term you want to throw at it. But we're being told it's coming together, that the definition is coming together. There are pilot projects. So arguably you should look at the pilot projects that have already been given money to see what form they take, what physical form in terms of lot size and dwelling type, whether it's attached or detached or what have you. But as was pointed out, through the NGH program, all the participating communities that are not pilot project communities have $50,000 at their disposal. And maybe I'm using the wrong terms, but for us to help them explore how we might be able to use the concept in our own village. I agree with Dean because that's how I see where we're at right now. The county is willing to give us some of that $50,000 they've committed to us to help us figure out where, and more importantly, if the concept could fit into the village. But as part of our 2050 implementation plan, we need to define further the village center district. And so what I see us doing, and maybe it's more selfish than anything, is to try and leverage the county's money to help us do what we need to get done, and that is help us define the village center, what types of land uses and redevelopment areas we want to deal with going forward. And if by the time we get done with that process, the NGH concept has gelled to the point where it's something that we think we could make work in our village center district on any one of the 3 parcels that we've sort of preliminary identified as potentially suitable for that type of development, given how loosely it's defined right now. That's what we'll do. We'll make that decision at that point in the process. Meanwhile, we have leveraged the county money to our benefit. We're going to have to, honestly, Dean, we're going to have to throw in some of our own money to help that consultant help us define some of the village center district concepts that are not related to the NGH. Design guidelines for new commercial retail buildings, design guidelines for the tying together the sidewalks and the paths and the wayfinding, if we go that far. So while, correct me if I'm wrong, are we asking for a decision tonight, or are we simply updating where we're at in the process? Because we're still meeting with this consultant to define those optional tasks, which would be the non-NGH tasks of helping us define our village center district further.
I think because of the time frame and because there's not another meeting until September 19th, we're asking for a decision. Part of that decision can be, giving feedback, and as Jeff mentioned, and as I mentioned earlier, we are still working on some of the final language with Vanderwall and some of the specifics, but yeah, we are looking for a decision tonight.
Can I ask, is there a motion on the floor? No. There's no motion on the floor? I make a motion to approve new business item.
Don't I still have the floor? Because I just asked Jeff a question. Just asking.
Yes.
Follow up, Jeff. My second question is, why can't we use Grafe? They've done a lot. On the 2050 plan, they'll only do what we ask them to do. So if we take funds, like you said, the 50,000 or 16,700 is not going to cover what we need. We've already worked with Grafe. They have a history with our village, not only the DPW, but the whole 2050 plan. So what would, I'm saying, why couldn't we make an RFP? Why don't we get other costs? And what, do we know what the cost would be? We don't know what the cost would be for making these ordinances like you're asking.
What was the question?
Could we work with Grafe? Could we put this out, Mr. Krecklow, board, for an RFP? Because if we decide not to go with the NGH and we say bye-bye, well, I don't want people knocking on my door.
I understand. Yes, the answer is yes. We could certainly do that. In fact, if we didn't have the opportunity of being able to leverage county money to help us, we would likely be doing our own RFP and looking for the same sort of service to help us define our village center district and then do the zoning code regulations as part of the next step, and then identifying the specific parcels to apply certain types of redevelopment strategies, whether it's commercial, retail, public park. Hey, we want to be, kayaking on the Menominee River by next year, right? So we got to identify those things quickly and get through the process.
Well,
the answer is yes, we could do that. Grafe, yeah, we use Grafe a lot.
Yeah.
And personally, I think we've stretched them a little thin, and we need to see who else is out there available that can help us.
Well, then it should be then it should be an RFP and not just the Washington County.
Well, I would say this, with regard to Vanderwall, they're certainly qualified to do what we would be looking for them to do, whether it be them, Grafe, or Vierbischer, or any of the other consultants that applied for our 2050 plan project.
There you go. There's others out there.
But again, from a personal and a selfish perspective, my hope is that we could take advantage of some of the county money to help us do what we need to get done. So we're not, gotta be careful what I say because the county might be listening, but
There they are. They have microphones everywhere.
If we can get for 90% of what we had to pay for 100% on our own, I think we're still a little bit better off. Even if at the end of the day, we say to the county, I'm sorry, we like what you did, but we don't think it's going to work in our village center
Thank
district.
you, but no thank you. If that's what's determined.
Yeah. I yield the floor to the next person. I don't agree with you, Jeff, but.
Trustee
hey.
Kaminsky.
Actually, I think our community development director has convinced me that we should move ahead with this. I was just online looking at Vanderwall. What an awesome firm.
Yes.
And what experience they have in just totally recreating crappy areas in different cities and better areas in halfway decent cities. As long as we are not tied to the, what is it, affordable housing? What's it called? Next gen housing. As long as we're not tied to that and we can cleanly go in and get their expertise and get this done, because anything else have to come back before the board anyway.
Right.
So I am totally okay after seeing who they are as well. They do amazing things. That, well, let's take it and see what we can do with our village center. We've been putting that off for way too long.
Trustee Pieper.
I make a motion to approve new business item K.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Kind of had it. Trustee Baum.
I have staff that has worked on the development in Mequon. I have staff that's worked in development in Brown Deer. These developments take 13 years to get off the ground. Mequon started their town center design 13 years ago, writing their own ordinances. We don't have 13 years to wait to put all this stuff together. By bringing somebody in to help us with a part of it under the NGH umbrella, we'll use it somewhere. We may not use it at all, but at least we will have an ordinance about NGH housing that may never get put into any district. We have set aside at the last plan commission meeting 5 areas that we want to start moving forward with, having neighborhood meetings, the village center being one of them. This is part of that process of moving it forward to get the information, to start putting plans together as to where we want this village to go. There's a lot of great opportunities out there. We see them in all the surrounding neighborhoods. This is just the start of it. It's just getting in, having these people help us put this together so it doesn't take us 13 years to do it.
Further discussion? No further discussion? Trustee Chandmiller.
The NGH is not defined. It's not clearly defined. It keeps changing. And that's the problem that I have with this. And you can create spend the time or spend the money creating an ordinance of something that you wouldn't use. So why are we even doing the exercise? So that's the problem I have. And if we're not getting something that we need from Grafe, then why don't we have an RFP going forward for someone else specifically? That's my question.
Further discussion? Roll call vote.
Trustee Pieper.
Aye.
Trustee Baum.
Aye.
Trustee Hudson.
Nay.
Trustee Kaminsky. Trustee Jan Miller.
Nay.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Knight Rider.
Aye.
President Walter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is item L, sale and purchase and development agreement with F Street Germantown LLC. The village board may enter into a closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subsection 1 subparagraph E for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate.
Motion to go into closed session for item L. Who needs to be here?
Mr. President, if I may, just before the board considers a motion to go into closed session, we do have Nate Laurent from Keller Construction here this evening on behalf of F Street and Keller. If there are any questions or any about the development itself that the village board would like to address to Mr. Laurent before you go into closed session, since obviously he would not be a part of that. He is available here if there are any questions the board would like to ask about the development being proposed on the Kraus property at Wazaki and Donges Bay.
I know.
Do you have any PowerPoint or anything?
Mr. Lawrence, if you'd like to come up and just make any comments?
Since you've been with us so long, your kids are in bed already, so you might as well stay and say something.
I live on Hawthorne, so I don't have to go very far. Yeah, so this is just more about the developers agreement than it is the plans, but I mean, I guess an update since a lot of you were here when we presented preliminary plans. The planning commission, we did make, on our side, adjustments to address all the comments. The buildings were flipped the opposite way to shade the truck docks from visibility from the new DBW site. We've taken into consideration more landscape berming, and the architectural elements of the building have been brought up a bit more, and we're confident we'll make it through a planning commission approval. Our plan would be to start possibly some site work this fall, just to get ready for spring construction, but building occupiable by the, our goal would be, towards the end of next year, but a lot of lead times and variability in the construction cycle and in our industry today. So that's why the dates are what we've proposed with F Street Development and Keller. And while they're the lead developer, we are an investor with them in a lot of different properties and projects. In Appleton, we've done about 500,000 square feet in similar fashion. We're just starting St. Augusta and St. Cloud, and we've all been very happy in working with them. And they're probably one of our better development partners in terms of doing a good job in the communities they're working in. They do a good job of financing their projects strongly and coming through with their commitments that they've made to the communities that they work in. So they also do some residential and multifamily, but mainly we work with them on the industrial side. So great that they're a partner with us, and we're looking forward to it.
Question?
You're partnering with whom?
F Street Development Corporation. So they're actually the entity on the developers agreement.
Okay, they're executing it.
Correct.
Any other questions?
Thanks for staying.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Who's staying?
Attorney, the Public Works Director. So
Get out. The rest of us could go. Tell us how that turns out. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Pieper? Aye. Trustee Baum? Trustee Hudson? Aye. Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Rick Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Nightrider?
Aye.
President Walter?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, before we go into closed session, and before we adjourn for closed session, the next village board meeting, there was a joint village board meeting, the school board, for August 29th. We just got communication from the school district that they need to reschedule one of their meetings for August 29th, so they are canceling that joint meeting. So that allows that day open for opportunity of that if we need to do something as a board before Labor Day, we can do that, or if there's something that wants to be done or some discussion in regards to the 2050 plan, that could be happening as well. But just so everybody is aware, the joint village board meeting and school board meeting that was scheduled for August 29th is canceled, and more information to come as to what kind of meeting, if any, could occur on that date. Other than that, our next village board meeting would be in September, would be that second Monday of September because of which would be September 19th. Right, because of Labor Day. So we're probably, well, the 29th allows us that opportunity. Absolutely. It kind of worked out in a sense, even though I would have wanted the joint meeting. So thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching and have a good night. Please turn off your microphones.